Uh, Good morning, councillors. Good morning, staff. Good morning, guests to the chamber. Welcome to Projects and Monitoring 24-2. I do declare this meeting open and advise councillors that today's proceedings are being live streamed. You're well adverse to that, so that's the case. I'll open the meeting with a karakia. Whakatau mai te waro, whakatia mai hini naru, whakarite te tinana, kia ia ai ngā mahi. Ai. Sorry, I butcher that every time. I will get better. Looks like we have a full muster of councillors present today, and no apologies are needed. I just call for any declarations of interest as standard operating procedure. It doesn't appear to be. You're all very vitally interested in the matters of the industry. Before I start public forum today, and we have two lots of speakers to do it, I just want to make one comment on the agenda, and councillors, you've read it all today, and I'll share something with you. I had no briefing today for this meeting, so I have to read every single word of it, which is great. And I'd just like to compliment, before the meeting starts, Group Manager Crow here on an outstanding agenda, really. And I think as you read through it and the new format of monitoring all the various activities and the graphs and that, and people following online, I can refer you to the public agenda that's there. I think it's a great format. So I'll just start on that very positive note, and we'll have a wrap up at the end and just see if councillors share my views. And we've managed to wrestle some of our activities back from Councillor Granger, the chairman. He's now focused on the big picture and just landing the whole business on the end point. So that's the end of my declarations. Mike Williams, former Deputy Mayor. If I say you're the best Deputy Mayor I ever served under, I'd stir up a bit of trouble on my right, but it might be pretty close. Mike was a great councillor, and we shared some great times here. Mike, welcome to the chamber, and over to you.
Can you hear me? Is this on? The red light means it's on. Yeah. Thanks very much, councillors, and thanks for giving us the time today. And we're here, as you know, to talk about the barriers across intersections. And we were asking for your support as our representatives to put pressure on government agencies, MPs, anyone you can possibly think of, to change the idea of barriers going across the intersections. We're not opposed to barriers per se, but we're definitely opposed to them going across our intersections. And we've got a few slides here. Is it on, or doesn't look like it?
Might have some help here for you, Mike, just a bit of technical help coming in.
Okay, so
Mike, if I can, I'll just steal your thunder a little bit. Cameron, welcome along to the chamber today. It's great to have a local MP attending our meetings, and you're the first we've had for a long time, so welcome along.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mike.
Okay, and I'd just like to say that, you know, all these people who have come in haven't come in just because they've got nothing better to do in their life. So, and they also don't really want to travel an extra 6 kilometres or more every time they go home from Katikati. And I'd just ask any of you, if someone said to you that you've got an extra 6 kilometres to travel before you go home, how would you feel about that? You would not be sitting here twiddling your fingers, you'd be doing something about it. So just bear that in mind as we go through this. So this is barriers across intersections, and as I've said, it's the intersections that really concern us. And you can see there's a barrier there. Wrong one. Do I do it on there or on here? On there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, as you can see, NZTA plans to install barriers across the Work Road, State Highway 2 intersection and other intersections. This has created widespread frustration, fear and anger amongst the community. Proposed barriers will force southbound State Highway 2 traffic wishing to access Work Road to travel an extra unnecessary 7 kilometres every time. Commuters can do multiple trips per day, and this just doesn't apply to Work Road. This applies to Lund Road, Turner Road, and to a lesser extent, most of the other roads that don't have roundabouts. The proposal is simply unnecessary and is overreach. The proposal is permanent. The environmental infrastructural damage and increase in emissions and cost and disruption to hundreds of businesses, farms, orchards, packhouses, forestry operations, residents, tradespeople, trucks, postal courier services, school buses, ag contractors, emergency vehicles, etc. is therefore immeasurable. And emergency vehicles is something that really concerns us because it doesn't take long. Oops. I'm not being very successful with this IT. Whoops. Oh, okay. No? Oh, okay. So here we go. No, I'm going the wrong way. Okay.
Just press one of these.
Okay, press one of those. Thanks.
Do you want the next one?
Next one, yeah. Work Road and other roads off State Highway 2 have suffered multiple emergency services events in recent times. This is up our roads. The extra time for emergency vehicles to attend these incidents may be life-threatening. There's a friend of mine who's she's a practice manager at the Katikati Medical Centre, and she said that if you have a heart attack, every minute is crucial to get that person, to keep that person alive. Well, if these barriers go up, that will mean another 7 or 8 minutes to get up to Work Road, unless they do what is supposedly illegal, is to do U-turns at the end of barriers, which is what the rest of us will probably do as well, making it a more dangerous road. Proposed barriers will also create danger as they will have gaps near bridges, guaranteed to encourage U-turns by those wanting to avoid extra cost and delay. I have tried it, and it's quite easy to do, because we've got a very nice wide piece of road as you approach the bridge past Work Road heading towards Tauranga, and you just put your hazard lights on and whip around. This will create increased traffic turning at roundabouts, causing significant delays and disruption to traffic flow. Western Bay residents applaud much of the State Highway 2 upgrades completed by NZTA in recent years, including improvements at the Work Road intersection, such as reducing speed limits, removing passing lanes, widening roads, improving left-hand turn in, better road markings, but barrier installation across intersections will ruin all the good work. So many unknowns. Is this an experiment? There are many examples that I've seen around the country where they've got wire barriers, and there's none that I've seen where they have wire barriers across all the intersections. They did say that they're doing them down in the Waikato at the moment, but I recently drove up from Otaki to Levin, where they have wire barriers there, and every intersection I could see didn't have the wire barriers going past. And I thought, if it's good enough for State Highway 1, why is it not good enough for State Highway 2? Data referenced by NZTA does not appear to take proper account of recent improvements. Therefore, it is out of date. Bearing in mind that all the work that NZTA did was based on a study about 8 years ago, when it was a 100-kilometre-an-hour road, narrow, no decent intersection pull-ins, pull-outs, all this sort of stuff. So they've now reduced the speed and improved all these things, and they still want to put wire barriers across. So we feel that there needs to be a pause in what they're doing, and we'll look at how the road works once all the construction's been completed. And as for consultation, well, yeah, right, opposition to barriers voiced throughout consultation, ignored as if process was a box tick exercise. And from what I can see, nearly all the submissions are against the wire barriers. NZTA appear to have adopted a strategy of not responding or delaying responding. to request for further information or consultation. It appears to be a stalling tactic. Consultation process to be challenged, EB and Ombudsman review. Now, this is one of the photos that someone's taken of the one of the open days that was on the about the roundabouts and that, and you'll notice there this Work Road was a proposed roundabout, but they decided in their wisdom that it would go to Morton Road, and we understand the rationale behind that was it was going to be cheaper and easier for them to construct it there. Western Bay residents propose a 2-year moratorium on the installation of barriers until the effect of other recent upgrades can be fully assessed, incorporating more up-to-date data. Because the data is old, it's based on a 100-kilometre narrow, dangerous road, so we want the data to be upgraded to a 80-kilometre-hour, much safer, full pull-ins, pull-outs on all the intersections, and have the data on that. Should barriers proceed, one option for Work Road is to maintain, with some design improvements, the existing State Highway 2 southbound right-hand turning bay. Work Road users prepared to give up the right-hand turn out of Work Road, i.e. design a gap in the barrier, simple variation to the contract continues, homes and properties able to be accessed, safer road. It's a win-win. This option could be rolled out on other roads such as Lund Road and Walker Road. Here's a photo or a description of how it would work. And there's another one here of a car turning out of Work Road, and a second one here of a car turning in. And there's that was the end of the slide presentation. But there are other options that NZTA can use, but they simply ignore them or don't want to listen to us or use them. We have had a visit to NZTA. There was 4 of us went along, and again, I felt it was rather a box-ticking exercise that they could say, well, we've talked to the locals and we can tick that box and we can tell the Minister and NZTA Chair that we've done that, and we'll just carry on and do exactly what we want to do. That's definitely the feeling that I got when I walked out of there. Even though the NZTA rep, David Spears, said he will convey our conversation as it was portrayed to him, to the Minister. But what that means, I'm not too sure. So, and we've spoken to the Regional Council asking for their support on this. We have visited every MP in our local area, and Cameron Luxton here, which I'd like to thank him. I didn't go and visit him because I was at the NZTA meeting. So we can't do much more than after this, other than do some protesting and things like that. And people will be getting quite upset if their voices aren't listened to. So I do urge you to contact on our behalf the local MPs, NZTA, and Simeon Brown and Simon Bridges. I'm sure that some of my colleagues here would like to have a quick word, if that's all right, Mr. Chair. Alan?
Hello, I'm Alan Dodwell. I'm a resident of Walker Road East. Mike's sort of been through the sort of improvements that have been made to the road already. I'd like to come at it from a slightly different tack. I mean, most of us who live there have been driving State Highway 2 in its unimproved state for decades. I personally am quite happy to take what is purported to be an additional risk for driving a much safer road in future. And I think that's pretty common amongst the bulk of the population. So if democracy has any meaning, you should be listening to us. I don't think I'll go on any further. Thank you.
My name's Kirsten, I live at Work Road. I just want to convey to you guys the feeling of the residents and the community, and we're just a small group here, but we have thousands of people up our roads that are really not happy. And I don't know how you get slammed on Facebook when you write anything and you're just trying to let people know where you're going to go, but it could not turn out very nice. So I just would like to see the support of the council, because it's quite overwhelming when you're just a little group and no one's you don't feel like anyone's got your back, and especially when the NZTA have just not looked at the data. They keep throwing these figures at us and they're wrong, completely wrong. You can't, it's just not fair.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that the data that I have got from NZTA has shown that there's only been one fatal accident in the section of State Highway 2 from Katikati to Omakaroa in the last 10 or 11 years, and that was off Dawson Road, which a lot of you may know of, which is the Ongatiri Pack House, where 5 Tongans were killed. Now, that's the only one of the sections of the road that's not going to have a wire barrier put past it. I'll just advise you of that. So, and it seems extraordinary to me that they can not put wire barriers past there, where the only accident has happened, and yet put wire barriers past all the intersections where no accidents have happened, or no fatalities. There have been minor accidents. So their rationale is flawed, and that the figures that they're throwing around at us, like this is going to save 60 deaths a year. Well, yes, but the deaths aren't coming from intersections, and this is what we can't seem to get through to them. So we are asking you to please listen to us and start making a little bit of noise. I've heard nothing from this council about the wire barriers going past. There's not been a press release, there's been absolutely nothing. And I'd really like to see something, even if you do, I don't suppose the press are here, but I'd really love to see something that says that you support us. But at this stage, your silence has been quite deafening. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike, and your supporters. Right, councillors, we have an opportunity for a couple of questions. Deputy Mayor Scrymgeour.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. So just to make sure I've understood what you were saying correctly, the number of the issue is that you're saying if this barrier goes across the intersection, people will go to the end of the barrier and turn in a less safe position. Have I got that correct?
That is absolutely correct. There is, like for Work Road, for example, it's only about 300 metres down the road that the barrier will end, and you've got another 200 metres to the start of the bridge, and people do a U-turn at the end of that barrier. And that's exactly what will happen all along the road.
Councillor Murray Bench.
Wonderful to see you here, Mike. You haven't lost your touch, and your great skill was you're a great listener. And I think a good example for all our councillors. I'd just like to, my first personal opinion is Katikati to Tauranga should be 4-laned. So 2017, they were only interested in road safety. And here you are, the victims of that policy. So they've put in huge roundabouts. You don't want those. And here you've got a cheap alternative that nobody's listening to you. Have you spoken to Scott Simpson? And what has he said he will do?
Thank you, Margaret. Yes, we have spoken to Scott Simpson and all the other MPs in this area. And Scott has said that he's spoken to Simeon Brown, and I've actually had texts from him because I recently sent him another thing to say that he will keep following up on it. But what we really need is someone to start making some noise. And I'm keeping on talking with Scott, so hopefully he will bang the table a little bit louder.
Could I suggest that you ask to speak in Wellington to the Minister, that you will go wherever he wants to in order to meet him and see what that does?
Thank you, Margaret. That's a good suggestion, and it's one that's been in the back of my mind, so I'll probably take that one along with a few other ideas as well, but appreciate that.
Right. So what you would like from us today is to make sure that at our full council we move a motion that we fully support the removal of the barrier at those intersections.
Well, I'm not sure whether you can do that, but it would be great if you can put something in a strong submission to the Transport Agency in support of us. And I don't care how you do it, but I'd love to see you do it. Thank you.
Right, I'll go to my deputy chair, councillor Sol.
Thank you very much, all of you, for bringing this in. I'm one of the councillors that has to drive that road quite regularly and do turn off to visit constituents and to do things. So quite appreciate the issue. Also, I actually have to make an observation. In Australia, you have roads that are 110 kilometres an hour, dual lane both ways, and still you can move into the centre of that road and turn right. You know, so it works in a country that's bigger, running at faster speeds, etc. But my question largely has been answered by your reply to Margaret, is to support you. Are there particular areas that you feel are going to give you the best bang for buck with us? You know, I guess it's a broad one. You'd like us to just totally support you, but is there a particular prime area that you feel that we can make a big difference for you?
Well, I guess where you can help us the most is by continuing on and putting our case to NZTA representatives like David Spears, who I imagine comes here occasionally, Simeon Brown, the MP, and the Minister of Transport, and Simon Bridges, who's the chair of NZTA. And the more you can write to these people and do something, the more I think they will realise that we're just not prepared to lie down and take this. Because you can also indicate, if you like, that there will probably be disruptive protests along that road, and that will definitely then start getting the attention of the press and a few other people. And MPs generally don't like seeing things like that happening.
Right, Mike, I've got four last questions. I've got Councillor Coxhead, followed by the two Katikati councillors, and then Mayor Denya's going to have the final word. So, Councillor Coxhead.
Thank you all for bringing this to our attention. I was interested in your comment about, is this experimental? In the weekend I drove to Northland, and whilst they're prolific, these barriers here, they don't seem anywhere near as overwhelmingly present up there. So I was just interested in what you meant by that comment.
Well, I guess what we mean by that comment is that, as far as we're aware, there's nowhere else in New Zealand where they've put wire barriers past intersections like that, although one of the NZTA reps said that they are doing it over in the Waikato. But this part of the Bay of Plenty, or where we live, is one of the most densely populated sort of rural residential areas probably in New Zealand. And the state highway is our backbone. And they could try to cut us off from that and also cut us off from our community. For example, Work Road people will probably go to Omokoroa now, which is not their natural town. Katikati is, because for them to come home, it's another 7 kilometres. But if we go to Omokoroa, it's only an extra half K or a K, because we'd have to go up around the Moreton Road roundabout and into Omokoroa. But coming home, we just go straight into Work Road. So, you know, that's going to affect Katikati. And I don't know whether Katikati even realises that. The retail people in there, all the businesses. So, you know, for us, you know, I don't have children at school anymore, but people who've got school kids that go to sports on Saturdays and after school activities, all these things are going to be affected by these roads. They don't understand how this is going to disconnect us from our communities. So, thank you.
Anne.
Yeah, I totally agree with you about the disconnect, and as a member of Open Air Art, we're very aware of that and very concerned about the tourism element that we will be missing by having these come down the road. I have to say that this has been around for a long time, and it's great to see so many people active about it, but at the time to do it could have been better placed by having it earlier. But I'm in total support with all of you, and we'll do what we can. And you're right, as a council, we haven't done a lot as a collective, but individually we have. And it's fallen on deaf ears like it has with you as well. So just to get the understanding, when we had the forum meeting, the meeting was no barriers down at all. Now you've had the meeting with NZTA and I've fallen on deaf ears, and I totally support the no barriers over the entrance into the side streets. Is that where we're at now? So looking at the picture that you showed us around Work Road, that would not mean a right-hand turn out of any of those roads. A right-hand turn into it, but not out of it. Yeah, well, I would fully support that because I could see right-hand turn coming out could be difficult on some of the roads. Yes, Alan?
Yeah, that doesn't actually apply to all of the roads. It doesn't solve the problem for many of the other roads. So, I mean, I would be advocating for the ability to turn right onto or off State Highway 2 from all the side roads.
Some of them, as you pointed out in that picture, I think Work Road could be more challenging than some. But just to clarify that where you are at the moment, that's what we've moved past no barriers because that's fallen on deaf ears, and this is where we're supporting you and advocating for what you're coming to talk to us about today. Okay, thank you.
Can I just add, one of the reasons why we've sort of gone off the no barriers, though we'd probably prefer to see that to start with until State Highway 2 was completely finished to Omokaroa, which means the roundabout at Epida and the roundabout at Esdale Road, plus the roundabout at Omokaroa. We'd prefer to see all that construction totally completed, give it a couple of years, and then do some statistics and see what that actually is happening before you go and put wire barriers up. That would be our preference. But if they've got a contract going at the moment which says, and they're due to start in the next month or two, starting at just south of Wharawhara Road all the way through to Morton Road to erect the wire barriers, then we're asking for an alteration in the contract so that we can at least get gaps where the intersections are. And we still can't see why a seagull can't be utilised in those areas. They do it in many other places in New Zealand, but the NZTA have told me that this is old technology. Well, electricity is actually pretty old technology too, but it still works, and so do these seagulls. But the other reason that we're sort of pushing this is after that accident over in Ohaupo, we feel that a lot of people might say to us, oh, you're just damn lucky that you're getting wire barriers in your section of road. But I think the Ohaupo situation is quite different. That's a much faster road. It's actually quite a wide road most of the way. And I guess that was just another tragedy like the one at Dawson Road.
It was 3 lanes with a passing lane, Mike, at 100 k's. I drove it on yesterday, visiting my 2 kids farming over there. The Waikato is chaos. But anyway, Rodney.
Thanks for that. And you know you have my support as an individual. I mean, I've spent many a Christmas on Work Road when my uncle had the dairy farm that actually started on one side of the highway and went across up the other side. When they widened the road there, they took out his best paddock. You've covered most of the points. I was going to ask you about the economic effect on Katikati. I think that is of direct relevance to Katikati on top of the safety concerns you've raised. Sorry.
Can I just make a little point on that? I mean, when we went and saw NZTA, they made it quite clear in answer to a specific question that as part of the cost-benefit analysis, the last Labour government said that the cost to the residents and the local economy was specifically not to be factored in, not required. So they haven't considered the actual economic cost to the community.
Yeah, so that's another point that we need to pick up on.
This was part of the Roads to Zero, where safety just was absolutely the key and everything else was irrelevant.
And we're told it's changed, but as you say, it doesn't seem to have filtered down through the officials yet, which is a big problem. What I was going to ask is, you know, we talk about saving lives and median barriers do save lives, but there are other roads in our area, in our district, where there are many, many more deaths and probably have a greater need for these barriers. Have you looked at that part of it? I mean, the obvious one is coming off the Kaimai Hills on State Highway 29, where there seems to be a smash every few weeks. Yeah, and with a lot of death and destruction. I mean, have you actually have you suggested, because I think it's a really good idea, is actually take their money and spend it where it's more needed.
Yes, we have suggested that when we visited NZTA. We said that, you know, if, I'm sure that there's a highway that could take this, these wire barriers just as readily as where we are, and they could divert the contract to that particular piece. But no, the blinkers are on, and this has got a 1% chance of saving some more lives. So, you know, to me, this is what we were told in that room, a 1% chance. And but that would be even outside the margin of error, in my opinion. So, yeah.
Right, I'll tell you what, we're running close to time, but I've got Councillor Granger to squeeze in. I'm sure it's a question, not a comment. And then Mayor Denyer, who's driven the road for the last 10 years, is going to close it out. So Murray, then James.
Yeah, quick question. Do you have written support from Fire and Emergency and St John?
No, we don't, because they're so dependent on government money that they will do whatever the government wants, that expects them to say. Because Fire and Emergency, I've tried them, and they just said, no, we take what NZTA say as basically gospel. So no, we haven't had anything from them, but I have had it from like doctors, nurse practitioners, people like that. The effect of barriers going past the intersections could be fatal. And also fire and emergencies. Someone's house may not burn completely down because fire and emergency can get there now, but barriers.
Right, Mayor Jones, I'm sure he'll thank everyone for coming in and closing it out.
Thank you, Mike and Kirsten and Alan for coming. As you know, I was at that meeting, community forum, where there was a good show turnout from the community on this issue, and following that, just to let elected members know, I wrote a letter to Minister Simeon Brown and copied Scott Simpson to share your views and to suggest the gaps in the barriers as you have suggested, and that was, I was told, forwarded to Simon Bridges as well. So that message has come from me on behalf of council, I guess, to share those concerns. So that's and I understand from David Spears that he's asked his engineers to look at the possibility of putting those gaps in where possible. So we'll hear back about that, I guess.
Thank you, James. It would be really nice for us to have copies of that correspondence so that we can actually see what's been going on, because at this stage, anything out of NZTA or Simeon Brown or Simon Bridges is non-existent. And we don't even know whether you've sent these things or not. You can be telling us, but yeah, we've just seen no evidence of it. And it would be really appreciated if you'd CC us.
I'm pretty sure when the mayor says it's been done, Mike.
I'm sure he has done. It would be really nice.
Yeah.
And this is what we don't get, is we don't get any feedback.
Yep.
If we got feedback from people like James, we would then realise that he actually is on our side. And I'm sure he's done it, but you know, seeing it is believing it.
Oh, thank you for coming in today and helping jam up State Highway 2 and making my trip another 10 minutes longer, or you find people from Katikati, but things have to be done that have to be done. Thank you very much. I've got a second speaker, Dr. Bruce McCabe. Dr. Bruce, if you'd like to come forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry.
Thank you, councillors.
Hopefully you can find a chair briefly while you can listen to Bruce's submission. Oh, you better go around the front, Bruce. That's the best way. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you've mentioned, I'm Dr. Bruce McCabe, a Mokoroa Residents and Ratepayers Association. I'm here this morning to speak to item 12.1 on the agenda, the Elder Housing Ring-Fenced Activity Update as at the 4th of June 2024. Elder housing has become a real cost to ratepayers. contrary to council elder housing policy, which requires that the activity be ring-fenced and not a cost to ratepayers. The CEO and I agree that the expenditure of $4.6 million of Better Off funding on elder housing has resulted in an opportunity cost to ratepayers. This opportunity cost to ratepayers arises because the Better Off funding could have been used to fund other projects which would benefit the wider community and will need to be funded by rates. This opportunity cost has now crystallised as a real cost to ratepayers. And this has occurred because council has had to increase its debt limit to 200% of income and increase borrowing to pay for projects that would have, in part, been paid for using the Better Off funding, and has had to increase rates to support this additional borrowing and interest payments. This results in ratepayers having to pay the principal and pay the interest on $4.6 million of debt that, but for the expenditure of $4.6 million of Better Off funding on elder housing, would not exist. The real cost to ratepayers of the expenditure of the $4.6 million of Better Off funding on elder housing is greater than $4.6 million because of the combined principal and interest payments on this debt. The CEO has decided to charge the Aomokara Residents and Ratepayers Association for Lagoima requests about elder housing, which we cannot afford. I'm using this opportunity to find out how council is going to rectify the above policy breach. Elder housing appears to be in a sound financial position following the introduction of $4.6 million of Better Off funding and $6.5 million of Ministry of Housing and Urban Development funding at no cost to elder housing. The land exclusively occupied by elder housing units at 16A Beach Road, Katikati, has a current valuation of $470,000. Question is, how has this land value been brought into the elder housing accounts? Should this be accounted for as an interest-bearing loan from council to comply with council policy? Paragraph 4A in the officer's report states that $1.6 million was spent on our elder housing unit development and 16A Beach Road, Katikati. This conflicts with earlier council minutes stating that $1.8 million was advanced in June 2023 to this project for the construction of those houses. The statement that $1.6 million was spent on elder housing unit development at 16A Beach Road, the current value of these improvements on this land is $1.14 million based on council website information. Has council spent more on constructing units than they're worth? Has council overcapitalised on building units on this site? The financial projections are based on the assumption, these are the elder housing financial projections, are based on the assumption that tenants will be charged the maximum rent allowed by council policy. A Lagoima response request has confirmed that tenants are not being charged the maximum rent allowed by council policy. Therefore, it is unlikely that the financial projections actually reflect the current elder housing financial position. These accounts show a net asset growth over the 10-year period. Is this asset growth based on cost or market value? If it's cost, is it depreciated cost? Both of these affect the veracity of the figures in the account. The accounts show an accumulated cash surplus of $4.4 million over a 10-year period. How does this projected cash surplus take into account and link into the planned expenditure detailed for projects 28001A and 28003A in the long-term plan. And if I just refer to those two projects at the moment, one of them, there's regular spending of between 70 or 80 and $100,000 per year on elder housing units. Question is, how is that funded and how does that affect the financial position of the enterprise? And the second, where there's four lots, 173, 810, 923 and $960,000 spent every third year. Where's that money coming from? Is it coming from ratepayers, or is it, to use a term of coin, just aspirational, and you're going to find the money somehow or other? So ratepayers now have to pay both the capital and interest cost of a loan for $4.6 million required to undertake part of the planned council work program that could have been funded by the Better Off funding. This means that the real cost to ratepayers of council's decision to spend Better Off funding on elder housing will be considerably greater than $4.6 million. So the question now is, how does council make good on its policy of operating elder housing as a ring-fenced activity such that it is not a cost to ratepayers? Should the use of Better Off funding by elder housing be treated as an interest-bearing loan with the interest paid to council annually and the principal paid back over the economic life of the units funded by the Better Off funding? Should the annual cash surpluses be paid into the council general operating fund to be used for Three Waters projects, as the current government would like to see that money spent? Should the likely overcapitalised units at Beach Road, Katikati be sold, with sale funds being used to meet, in part, the actual cost to ratepayers of spending the Better Off funding on new elder housing units at Heron Crescent? Ratepayers are very much interested in how council is going to remedy the non-compliance with council elder housing policy resulting from the real cost to ratepayers of spending $4.6 million of Better Off funding on elder housing and the profligate spending proposed in the long-term plan 2024-34. In conclusion, I recommend that the council officer's report lay on the table until these issues are clarified and rectified. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Dr. McCabe. Now, councillors, just want to remind you, as per our standing orders, can I just take questions now? This item is on the agenda later in the meeting in 3 items' time. Kerry will be available to answer questions from an officer point of view, but really just use this final opportunity before we start the meeting or proceed with the meeting to ask Dr. McCabe any questions of clarification or anything else you might wish. So was that a hand from you, Councillor Mobench? Margaret, and then Rodney.
This is scary stuff, Mike. Thank you for your submission, Bruce. It's scary. What you're saying to us, if I'm right, is that the 4.6 million, which was for Three Waters, but it was interpreted as Better Off funding used for housing, and we could have actually used it to improve anything to do with the Three Waters. And as a result of using it for the housing for the elderly, we now have to borrow money to actually do the work for our Three Waters. Is that the argument that you're pursuing?
That is absolutely correct.
Is it normal for land that housing for the elderly sits on that belongs to a council? Is it normal to be taken that as gift, or should it be actually acknowledged as a financial commitment?
In this instance, where council have agreed that elder housing is going to be a ring-fenced activity of council and no cost to ratepayers, because that land has been brought into the elder housing operation, it needs to be treated as an input from council, from ratepayers, that needs to be accounted for such that it isn't a cost to ratepayers. In other words, a loan payable back with interest. The reason I say that is that land is exclusively occupied by those elder housing units. Council could have sold that land on the open market and it could have been used by someone else to build housing. So there is a real cost to ratepayers unless that transaction is accounted for properly.
Right. You said that we're not charging properly the rentals. Could you clarify that, please?
I don't have the information in front of me, but as part of a Lagoima request to the CEO, the question was, what is the minimum and what is the maximum rental that will be charged for elder housing units? And the minimum and maximum were the same, and they were below, substantially below, the calculated gross rental that could be charged so that their net rental was less than whatever percentage of their income was. So I don't have that figure, but the fact that the maximum rentable allowable under policy is not being charged, and those accounts that you see or that are provided are based on those maximum rentals being charged, you can't really rely on the figures in those accounts because the cash surplus, if one actually exists, will be less than what is portrayed in those accounts.
So one of the things that really bugs me is that you're being charged for your official information requests. We were told that that was a very rare thing that, because I argued...
Well, you just asking comments. No, questions, please. We don't want your comments. We don't want your view at the moment. We just want comments to Dr. McCabe.
A question. How much are you being charged for your requests?
To answer that question, it all hinges around elder housing. And we've, over time, been trying to better understand the finances of elder housing. And there was one critical Lagoima request that took the council 2.5 years to respond to, and 2 complaints to the Ombudsman. And I think their response probably precipitated council going to PwC to get some professional modelling software in-house, because, to be quite honest, those accounts that council was working off were absolutely abysmal. So in terms of that one last request that we made, it was $380, of which we just don't have cash slopping around to spend on those things. So I'm really reliant on councillors to answer the questions so that the answers go on record so we have access to them.
Right, Councillor Joyce, your question.
So just questions, Brett. Thank you for your hard work, and I do appreciate it, even if I don't always agree with everything. The current value of improvements on this land is 1.14 million. I think you've answered this. That's 0.5, 0.1. So that's come from the council rating records, is it?
That is correct.
Okay. You're aware that the council gets $15 to $20 million a year in subsidies from the government. This year up to, I think it is 38 million. We don't charge cost of capital on any of that. So why should we charge it here if we don't charge it on any other subsidies that we get?
I didn't imply that you were charging loss on capital. I was asking the question whether you were.
Yeah. You talk about the cost of the $4.6 million of Better Off funding. Are you aware that we couldn't actually spend that on Three Waters? If you look at the criteria, and I've got it up in front of me, we'll have in a moment, we were given 3 options, none of which were Three Waters projects.
There were a range of options, but however, other councils have spent that Better Off funding on Three Waters type projects. And secondly, the current government, when it came in, issued a request, directive, whatever you want to call it, that councils where they had not spent the Better Off funding were to spend it on Three Waters projects. Now, my understanding is council has not yet spent the bulk of that Three Waters funding, Better Off funding, and the contract for works at Heron Crescent hasn't actually started, and council, if it were thinking of the future, would be wanting to entertain the current government's request and possibly renegotiate that contract to exit so the money could be spent on Three Waters projects, because I note that there's some large chunks of money going to Three Waters projects like the Katikati sewage outfall, for instance.
So your belief is that we should renege on the contract let for Heron Crescent, because it has been let.
The word is not renege. It's
Well, if the
negotiate
contract-
your way out of it. There's always an exit clause, and it depends upon what it costs. And the cost of not doing that, I'm arguing, is quite high.
Right, Councillor Granger, second last question, Councillor Coxey.
Well, my question to Dr. McCabe was, can you tell us what the activities that we were allowed to spend the money on, the better off funding on, are?
I put it back to you, Councillor Granger. Did you consider other activities? Because if you didn't, in terms of representing ratepayers, you were remiss.
Right, Councillor Coxey.
That wasn't the question.
Dr. McCabe, this may be an unfair question to ask you, or someone else might be able to answer it, but is this the only council that ring fences this activity, or do we know if other councils do, or do you know?
I do know a lot of councils have exited elder housing because they cannot make those activities wash their face. In other words, they're loss-making, and they feel that with the sale of those assets, the money is better off spent on other activities that ratepayers require.
Right. Not specifically, but I'm sure we can find that out by the time Kerry comes up here. Do a bit of research. I don't know actually. No, I don't know. Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Right, councillors. The Rocky Cutting petition. Callum, is some of your team coming up to speak to this? And like I said, councillors, there'll be another chance to just tidy up any questions you have on the elder housing item after morning tea. It's on the agenda. Callum, welcome along.
Hey, Sam's going to speak to this report. I'm just here for moral support.
Good morning. So I assume that I can take this report as being read, and if you have any questions, fire away.
Efficient way of dealing with it, yes. Councillor Murray Bench.
Sir, we have so many dodgy roads in our district, and the people here are calling for work to be done.
Point of order, I don't think that kind
Sorry?
of wording's appropriate to call it dodgy roads.
We do have dodgy roads, and we are in the process of improving them. So I don't take that issue back. You only had to listen to the people from Katikati. That's a dodgy decision that's made by NZTA.
Okay, we don't need to get into debate. I think if you watch the news items every night, you could see that New Zealand-wide there is, we are challenged through a long, windy roading network. And we see even State Highway 1 was receiving repairs south of Kaitaia and trying to get that rehabilitated. So maybe we should just stick to the facts on this one. So do you have a question?
Having lived on a rural road and knowing how difficult it is to influence the decision makers for the upgrade of them, how long, if we don't do the work on this now, how long will the people have to wait for something to be done?
So we have a, on the program there's a road sealing project in the next 4 to 5 years for that section of road to be sealed, not widened, but sealed. So that would help extend the life of the pavement and help with the potholes and that type of thing that they're currently experiencing. But with regards to the widening of the road, that's not currently on the program.
So as for the potholes on the road, They would obviously come under a maintenance contract.
Correct.
And what are we doing about that?
Our team have fixed those potholes.
Councillor Henry, your name's on my list here from my esteemed assistant, eh? I am. Welcome to the meeting.
So I have greater sympathy with the group of people that have put the names of this submission. I have grave concerns though, because about the process that we're going through now, because I don't remember seeing a petition like this put forward to us for to actually action a upgrade of a road. And so that's what mine is, not about whether it's worthy or not. So the question is to this committee is, are we setting ourselves up for a precedent that this is how people are actually going to get their roads attention by the fact that we're going to be having this petitioning coming towards us, which is a dire thing, because they shouldn't be doing that. We should be actually giving them what they need, because that's what we're here to do. So I'm asking this of this committee, is this the way we're going to do it?
I can answer the first part, and Greg's just whispered in my ear that as per our standing orders, any petition that has to come to the relevant committee, so we've met that obligation. But before I go to Councillor Joyce and Deputy Mayor, Cedric's just going to talk about our overall, how we spend our, whatever it is, 20, 30, something each year.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Probably a lot of it is captured within the report, but I guess the crux of this is, I think when we're out there assessing, we're also assessing against our traffic volume and our level of service and almost the old ONRC. So I guess for this particular road, Sam's gone out and had a look at against the request and understand what maintenance or what the level of service requirements are, and then she'll action accordingly. In terms of the road width and other areas, it's always assessed against our development code or what our minimum standards are for that particular road. And I guess that's how we've sort of assessed what requirements or upgrades need to be done. I think there's a good point there that we need to look at around the traffic volume, and that if it has significantly increased, it may have increased the hierarchy of that particular road, which mean additional widening may be required. But I think for these types of requests, we need to be mindful that we are assessing against our development code in terms of that standard that we can afford to fund and alignment with our level of service.
I'll go back to Rodney. I thought Andy Vickers might have had comments about the debris and the water tables, but we'll let that lie in the report. Yeah, we are on questions at the moment, but we're going back to Councillor Joyce. Not a question. Okay.
On the speed limit, we had the speed limit bylaw, and that was incredibly cumbersome. And we've moved to this new system, and now we've had perhaps our first request since putting the speed management plan in place. First request that I'm aware of anyway. So do we have a system to consider that? Because we don't want to have to wait until the next round of district-wide changes for every speed limit request.
So when we started the speed management planning process, we did recommend a reduction in the speed limit for Rocky Cutting Road. And then as part of the discussion that we had with the Strategy and Policy Committee on the speed management plan, that was increased to 80 kph from a recommendation of 60, and then eventually ended up to retain the existing 100 kph speed limit. So to answer your question, we have kind of gone through that process.
So my question is about process, not about what's happened in the past. My question is now that the speed management plan has finished, how are we going to consider requests past that point?
Well, the speed management plan has to be reviewed again in 3 years' time, so that would be I guess the first opportunity to look at Rocky Cutting Road and a speed limit reduction on Rocky Cutting Road.
So there's no way to consider any speed limit change anywhere in the district for 3 years?
No, that's not quite correct. I mean, if the nature of the road changed, then we would be justified in seeking a change in the speed limit. So if a rural road became an urban road, clearly we would not retain 100 kph on an urban road. But what you're talking about now is inconsistent with the approach we've taken on other rural roads. So you would be saying Rocky Cutting Road is the same as most rural roads, but we'll make this a special case and reduce the speed limit. So the problem is you're taking an inconsistent approach to one road as opposed to the rest of the network.
Didn't we do something on Woodland Road? Didn't we do something on Woodland Road at the request of residents?
Yeah,
So we have done that already, so it's not inconsistent with that.
we did that as part of the speed management plan process, though, not as an exception to the speed management plan.
Right, Deputy Mayor Scrooge.
Yeah, well, the issue I was going to ask about was exactly the same as Rodney's in regard to the speed limit. I will say that I took time to drive up there and back again this morning, and the physical constraints of the road suggest to me that it's not possible to drive more than about 50 k's safely over most of it. And the question, as we have often said here, is that it's one thing to put a speed limit in place, it's another to have people observe it if they don't really want to. But no, I think I'm aligned with Rodney that it would be good to probably address this issue a lot sooner than 3 years if we could, and at least look like we're doing something to help these people.
Sounds like people do observe the speed limit because it's not a target, it's an absolute maximum. So they are all well under it. So you could argue they are observing it, but sorry to be tin tax. Yeah. Yeah, Councillor Sol.
Thank you, sir. I also am following the comments actually that have just come through, but to me, basically it's not planned for any changes or resurfacing for basically out to 5 years. So we come back to what are we prepared or able to do to assist these people in the meantime, not just say no. Okay? I just do not feel that that is the thing. And so I look at some of the requests, and one that we have a statement about is the mirror that they've asked for instance. It's not suitable because it reflects it badly maybe at night, or that it deteriorates. So does that road, and in 5 years it's going to be one heck of a mess, I presume. So can't we do minor things to try to help these people? That's really the thing, is other parts of those requests maybe could be done and it may assist them. That's just number one. It's the optics, I guess, perhaps, so I don't like ticking boxes or making it that way entirely, but maybe it will make a difference for those people if we do something.
Was there a question? There was a question.
Why
Yes.
don't we do that? Some of those minor which that they've asked for.
I guess if we open it up, there'd be 100 requests come in, or...
Well, it will be opened up.
No, it won't be, because we have to receive submissions, but we have to also act to our roading budget plan that we've got. Yeah, that's fine. Councillor Daly, you've got something to add?
Yeah, just interestingly, I drove this road a week ago exactly. I didn't go that far down the road, but I'm very familiar with it, and it is quite narrow in there, isn't it? But it seems the issue is really because of the narrowness of the road, and the residents are concerned about the near misses with the increased number of trucks having to navigate it. But it is, like many of our rural roads, prone to speeding drivers, and like it's already been said, I don't think installing 50k signs is going to stop people speeding up that road. But I'm interested in the request for a mirror at the Welcome Bay Road, Rocky Cutting Road intersection. You've suggested that it wouldn't have much benefit, and I'm surprised that they've even requested it, because it is such a big, wide intersection. And what benefit are they hoping to gain by putting a mirror there? Because I would have thought it's quite open and visibility is pretty good there. Is this the exact location they're talking about?
Yeah, so my understanding is that it's when you're sitting at Rocky Cutting Road and you're looking towards the right, and that because there's quite a sharp bend on Welcome Bay Road, you can't see the sight distance is skewed by that embankment there. You can't see very far down the road until they get around that bend. So my understanding is that that's where that they would want the mirror, but as I've bullet pointed in the petition, I don't recommend it. I personally think that they provide more unsafe and false sense of security.
Yeah, we've got one in Boucher Avenue, which I think was installed by, did council install that after the last fatality on that corner? Because, I mean, it's almost, it's just almost has no impact, or I don't think there's any benefit at all, because you just can't see anything in those mirrors. So it would have to be a huge mirror to be effective, I think. But my question is, another question, if I can, is regarding to undertake regular gutter and drain cleaning. Has there been slips occurring as a result of the gutters and drains not being cleaned out in that section of road that they're talking about?
So there was a slip further up. I'm not entirely sure the exact reason why that happened. I mean, it would be due to the rain fall and that type of thing. But there haven't been, as far as I'm aware, further down the road and in the corner that they're talking about. But we have programmed a sweeper truck to go up there and clean out those gutters in accordance with the level of service.
Yeah. Well, the reason I went up there is because there's been about 5 or 6 major slips up that road over the last 10 to 15 years, and the most recent being obviously in the events of last year, I think anniversary weekend, Cyclone Gabriel, and then again in the event in April, May. And I've actually taken a number of detailed photos which I'm going to share with councillors. But I was wondering, at what cost to council has it been to remediate these slips over the last 10 years? Would we have any idea of that number? Because it's certainly in the millions, multi-millions, isn't it?
So the One Network maintenance contract included allowance for slip cleans in the lump sum. So we don't actually have visibility of the amounts that Westlink have spent cleaning slips over the past 9 years. That information is within the lump sum. We can't see how much they've actually spent. It was risk included for them, so it's not something we have access to.
Right, councillors, I do share your passion and commitment to our roading network. It is one of our key topics, and I think our time would be far better used in a workshop situation with the roading staff. I'm conscious of the people sitting behind you in this chamber. There's people from stormwater, there's waters experts, there's more water experts, there's finance people. So really what I'm suggesting is we receive this report, and I'm going to move Severin, I think, we'll move some of this discussion onto what we'll do long-term with our roading contract as we bring more and more of it in-house and under control. But I really want to get to these operational report to free these people up, because I'll take you in a minute, Councillor Mobench, because interweaved in these outstanding reports coming up is almost a plea for resource to make sure we can deliver the capital works program. So Cedric's been very cunning in his wording and putting that there, how important that is. Thank you. You're cutting me off now. Thank you. Can't move. Councillor Murray Beans, second by Councillor Henry.
Is it the 1, 2 and 3 are we moving? So
yes.
Does not approve. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, at this stage, that's why
I'll
we
second
work.
it.
Yep. Okay. Discussion. Okay.
Callum, you know the story with Waitoa Road as well as I do as well. This is a really common thing on these rural roads everywhere, isn't it, in the district? And is it, in your experience, do those no dumping signs actually have any impact?
So that's probably a question that's best put to our sustainability and waste people. I couldn't answer that question, unfortunately.
Right, I have a move from councillor Mobine, second by councillor Henry. Discussion, any further discussion? Councillor Sol?
Yes, sir. I mean, you just made a comment about seeing this go to a workshop, and there's nothing here that says it should or gives any.
No, but
indication.
sorry, it was more the comments from the floor. We were starting to wander into all sorts of levels of service, and we've got 1,200 kilometres of road, so, you know,
But should there not be something then saying that we would move it to a workshop?
No.
You can, an undertaking, that was all. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to thank the residents for bringing this to our attention. And I can see the need for many of the improvements. I do hope the programmed repairs and draining, cleaning are achieved and up to standards. So that responds to the point that Councillor Sol made, that actually some of the easy wins we have or are making to this road. However, with regard the major works, the seal widening, the seal extension, major works in general, whether seal widening, seal extension or rehab work, we have policies and prioritisations in place to determine this, and it would be wrong for us to capriciously override this. However, I would like to, I can move an amendment if you want, but I suggest maybe the mover and seconder would agree to this, is that it just gets added to the list of roads to be considered for speed changes when the time comes. I hear what Councillor Joyce was saying, that the previous speed bylaw process was cumbersome. We did it like every 6 years or whatever it was. And I hope the speed management plan is more flexible than that. However, I don't really want a situation where every time someone asks for a speed change, you know, all our strategy and policy time will be taken up with doing a road here or there. So I think we've got to bunch them up a little bit. And I also note that the new rules will mean that we need to do a cost benefit analysis for speed changes. So that needs to be considered as well. But I think it would make sense to, bunch them up so we can review it every 3 years or whatever we might choose. So, but I don't know if the movers and seconder would like to include that. Yeah, so add to the list for future consideration.
Add it to it, start making a new list. Yep.
Can I suggest some wording?
Yeah, they both agree. Yes.
That the staff review the speed management process to allow interim.
No, that's something quite different. I think I'm suggesting adding this road
Starting the list.
Wooden Hill
for
process.
consideration in a future speed management plan process.
We'll make note of it formally. Yep. Right. Speak to this.
Yep, I'll speak in support of the recommendations, just noting that we specify a level of service, which is effectively a specification of what we're going to deliver and is an agreement with the community that we actually do it. And it's been highlighted that we're not doing what we're meant to be doing. And so just noting that we carry out what we say we're going to do and it's done to an acceptable quality.
Mover, you used to have final speech, yep. Oh, sorry, Anne, and then you, sorry, and then you can, and Rodney.
Yeah, a very good report, very detailed, and really highlighting the needs that many of our roads have. And unfortunately, you have inherited a roading network that has very, very not code roads. That was a throwback from Tauranga Roading Board when they decided to spend the money wisely and do the little strips at the end of each road, which are causing Lung Road, Willenderman Road is one of those two, which you're yet to have a look at. And but that's not your fault. It's just that we'll get there. And it's unfortunate that, I mean, it's great that they've done this, but I could think of so many other roads that would do exactly the same, which is why I'm sitting here uncomfortable and why we're not approving it today, because, well, I wouldn't anyway, because of all the other roads that are in that same predicament. But I have greater sympathy with them. And they've got the other added difficulty that some of the other roads, they've got the huge trucks that are going up and down there, and that must be very, very frightening for them. So, yeah, I'd like to see us look at really, you know, the major job that you've got with limited money to fix all those roads up into the hills that they're not safe to travel on. So, yeah, we need to get on and do that and look for however we can make things better.
Right. Thank you, Anne. Councillor Joyce, followed by the mover.
So I'm uncomfortable with this for a couple of reasons. One is we acknowledge the road is not up to code, and we don't have the money to fix it straight away. That's reality. We can't fix all our undercode roads because we have a heap of them. So those that say our roading network is in wonderful shape, I don't agree with them. What concerns me, and I don't think the proposed amendment fixes this, is that we don't actually have a process to answer this concern. You know, we don't have a process. I accept what the Mayor says about, you know, stopping work every time a petition comes in, because we'll just get lots of petitions and doing them one by one. But actually saying to people, we will not review speed limits for 3 years is not a good answer. It's really not. So we need a process to manage this, and we don't have one. So, yeah, I would move an amendment. I doubt whether I'll get a second.
Point of order. The reason I said that's not right is that is not within delegations of this committee to work out a process for doing speed management plans. That would come under strategy and policy. So we can debate that, workshop that at some point, but we're not going to start moving amendments about how we're going to do speed management plans in this committee.
Well,
Yep.
up to you.
I think the Mayor's dead right there. That's for
He
another.
hasn't actually heard what I'm suggesting, so how can he actually put words in my mouth to say what I'm about to say? Because I haven't even said it yet.
Okay, we'll carry on.
Thank you. Please don't put words in my mouth, okay? All I'm asking for is for staff to go away, bring back to the relevant committee a process to manage interim requests between speed management plans. That does not break any committee structure. Should not be a problem to anybody around this table. Cedric's nodding, he gets it. So please, don't put words in my mouth. Just listen and then complain, okay?
Talk to the issue. Thank you. Right.
I think, sir, the amendment could be adjusted slightly to actually take into account both last speakers.
I think, I stand by what I said here. The process for doing speed management plan is not requested through projects and monitoring. It might seem a technicality, and that we can take it offline and discuss how best to do it, but
Look, it has been noted.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you. And I think we did used to do one ward at a time through the district, and then we said that was too clumsy and it took too long, and we said we'd do the whole district. Maybe we can do the whole district on an annual basis. That will be resolved at a further workshop. Right, Councillor Mobench, have you finished?
Yes, I have my speech.
Yep.
I think the one thing that I think that the petitioners, what we're getting is people are coming in here to tell us they want money spent where they want it spent. And so we've had a number of people in this morning saying about our roading network. And the lovely thing about it is the people are speaking. And Sam, you have replied by saying we are looking after the maintenance of that road, and I accept that that's what needs to happen. They're on the list to have their road sealed, and then that's also good. That's good news for them. I think a sign for the dumping would be worthwhile, as Councillor Coxhead has referred to, and that's something that's a practical thing that could be done. But what it is, a message to all we councillors, is that roading is important to the people of this district. And when we go through our budgets, we've got to make sure that we keep spending the amount of money that will meet the needs of our district on our roading network. And because you know that everybody is so grateful when their roads are sealed. So that's the message for our council today. Make sure that at budget time, we look after the roading budget properly. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I'll move that now. Recommendations 1, 2, 3, and a fourth, noting the speed limit. Yep. Review. All those in favour? Those against? I declare it carried. Right, councillors, you're on a strict time limit today. You've got 10 minutes to get out and grab a cup of tea, and then we'll be back here at 11 o'clock sharp, utilise all these staff, and then free them up to get on and do all these projects that Cedric tells us about, whether they're red, orange or red, green.
Can you ensure that Mr. and Mrs. McCabe have a cup of coffee too? I'm not the chairman.
Right, welcome back, everyone. As I mentioned earlier in the meeting, now we move to those operational risk scorecard reports. And a couple of, well, a new format at the end. The first parts we've had before. The second part seems to be enhanced, but do you want to work through the first part? Introduce it, Cedric?
So through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. So I guess starting off with the scorecard, we've revamped again, and it is still a work in progress. And we've got Peter Mickelson here from our compliance team to corporate services team, apologies for that, to comment more on that. I guess from the hot topics perspective, happy to answer any questions you might have on that. Cullum is obviously ready and waiting to provide a bit more detail on number 4 Road Bridge. I guess the big ones for me from an update perspective is that we are progressing well in the transportation side. We've obviously had the 17A approved procurement strategy as well and truly underway with Waka Kotahi that supports our 51% subsidy. The intention is to come back to a PNM workshop in August to discuss the level of service, what that might look like in terms of that goes into our long-term contracts. With, I guess, thinking of the previous paper we just had, one of the discussions in there was rural collection within rural roads. So that again, we'll discuss whether there's an opportunity that councillors want to fund that activity. So we'll be looking at a raft of levels of service from leaf fall collection right through to emptying bins to sweeping CBD footpaths to filling potholes, what that might look like. Part of that I think I picked up from the previous paper as well is we have roads that are outside the code and how we can look at that and discuss that further in the workshop setting and whether there's approach like seal extensions that we need to consider. So I think there's a bit of work for us to do on that. Another big one is obviously the Omokoroa intersection upgrade. So we're coming to the sticky point there where we've detailed designs are about 90 to 100% complete. So we're looking at the phasing of procurement. So how do we procure those services to minimise disruption to the Omokoroa residents, but also keep in line with program to enable development. That one there, probably the biggest concern there is probably our utilities and Powerco. So we're working with them to understand what their program is to shift lines and essentially drill maybe some of the fibre. Te Puke treatment plant is slowly progressing. We're working through with our designer. There's been some challenges in terms of their performance, but I feel like we're coming to the end of that now and we should see the detailed design in the coming months. The relationship with Tangata Whenua has significantly improved, and I think we're at the point now where it's taking shape in terms of partnership. So I think they're going to be a strong ally in terms of what we've got in place. We've got an update in terms of the outer housing coming up, but Heron Crescent's obviously underway and working through the building consent process there. We're still on program for that project as well. So I guess I'm happy to answer any questions on that before we get into the scorecard. But I'm mindful that a big one today is obviously to talk about our capital delivery, and which is Coralie is here to talk about that as well, because I guess one of the questions is what are we going to do differently to achieve the delivery for 24-25 season? We've got a big budget, a lot of projects. What is our process moving forward? How can we sort of drive accountability through our teams and deliver on those programs and meet that spend? Because it's obviously a concern whether it's in the PNM or the ARF committee. So that's definitely the time for us to highlight and show you what progress we've made and what sort of structure we've implemented to make sure that, from my perspective, no projects fall through the cracks. So happy to take any questions.
Right, councillor. So like Cedric's lead, he said that new approach to capital delivery, we'll take that the second stage. The first stage will deal with those 14 topics that it's been outlined through growth management, planning, reg services, stormwater transport. I've got one to kick off, and I guess it's linked with the first one being growth management and the regulatory services part. With the downturn, who's to speak? Who can speak to that? Alison, am I throwing you a curveball there? Just with the activity, and we're hearing, things tightening up around with building consent slowing down. Is that starting to impact a bit on our business?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, it is definitely impacting in terms of our business. There's a bit of commentary in the scorecard, which you can probably kind of touch on when we get to there, if I'm just looking at in terms of timing.
Councillors, I'm in your hands if you want to take any of those topics, and then we'll move to capital. Rodney.
I'll keep it brief. On the wastewater treatment plant and outfall, is there a way we can improve our communication? We tend to put out something when we detect a leak or potential leak, and we put up signs, but we don't tend to follow up with the public on what's actually happening. We've got major challenges, obviously, with this outfall. And I think, if we don't communicate what's happening, because in some cases we've declared a potential leak, then it turned out our instruments were broken. And, we just need to somehow, and I'm open to suggestions, how we can communicate better what's happening there. And the other question is, how does one get on the wastewater advisory group? Because I've asked a couple of times and I have not yet been told whether I can or cannot get on it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, definitely. I think we're good at signalling when we've got a leak, but probably closing that loop. So I think there's 2 points there, is that how we continue to communicate about the leak, and then how we actually communicate that project when we form the advisory group. Coralie and her team have just about finished the project scope and plan, and also a recommendation to come back to council in terms of who will be on that advisory group, noting that your interest in terms of that from the residents. So I think we're not too far on that, but maybe Coralie, have you got any comments on that?
No, I've made a note about the comms, so we'll work on that. And not much more to what Cedric's added. We've got the project plans just about finalised. We're meeting internally, I think this week or next Friday, to kind of get that adopted internally, and then we'll be coming back to the elected members to see who's going to be sitting on that.
Mr. Chairman, maybe I'll just add something about the wastewater advisory group. So that group's not met for some time, not this term. And it was, the members were set at the beginning of this term. I think we just rolled over the previous members, but look, I'm open to changing it, and I hear your expression that you want to be involved. Yeah, but look, I think obviously in consultation with Greer, I think we can work out if that membership needs to be changed or when that needs to be.
Thanks, James. Anne.
Well, I would really thoroughly be disappointed if the Katikati councillors were not included in that, as I'm sure that the section, like the bits about the fallouts and stuff like that, I can see that there is some interaction with the hapu, the iwi there, and maybe that's not necessary because we're getting that information through our meetings anyway about, breaks in the system and stuff like that. But definitely any developments that are coming with the new pipeline, and when we're looking at the new plant later on, which probably won't be in my lifetime if I don't get elected next time or don't stand. But so I've got 2 questions just of interest to me, and that's in a nice green space, so not too hard. Why did we have to get consent granted by an independent commissioner to build houses on the land in Heron Crescent, which was already land that was used for pensioner housing?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So response to that is that because it is our own site and our own work, so we can't issue. Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
okay,
so
cool.
we do look for independence in terms of processing the final
okay.
decision
No, that's
around
cool.
those.
Thank you.
resources, yes.
So that's a good one to have for our general public to know, be able to say that. So the other one was the land in 24 Middlebrook Road, which was council land. I guess it was bought by Kaingaroa for the 18 dwelling subdivision that's going ahead there. Is that correct? But before your time, but I'm assuming that that's what happened. Yeah. And when I spoke to the Kaingaroa,
So far as Kaingaroa
eh?
homes and communities.
Oh, okay. Whatever.
Carry on.
Community housing, we could call it. He was at one of the meetings to do with the Katikati housing group that meet. He said the development was about to start in July. Do you have any update on that? Does anyone have nothing? Nothing's been put in or anything yet? Oh, you don't have that information, okay. It would be interesting to know if that is that information, when that's available, if we would be let know, please. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I wish to go back to the Katikati wastewater plant and so on. And of course, the last paragraph is about the risk from the regional council. And it's stating there that it is quite high. What else have we got at present that can, number one, mitigate some of this further? Have we got other plans rolling to deal with this somehow? How is it able to be managed? Because, I mean, yeah, we're in a place which is really a rock and a hard place, and no gold to deal with it. And well, maybe it's coming, but it's taking so long, I guess, is the issue. What's going to happen here if they decide to move on us? How do we discharge them?
So just in terms of the risk of the non-compliance with regional council, that's about the discharge quality. We're getting high nitrogen coming through the treatment plant, so we're not meeting our resource consent conditions. We've just about to award a tender to upgrade the treatment plant, so that reduces that risk. And so regional council are happy as long as we keep progressing that treatment plant upgrade. It is disconnected from the outfall pipeline leaks.
Andy Wickens.
Yeah, a number of questions that I emailed through, so giving time for preparation. So we'll deal with the number one road rehab here. So that's sitting as a project that shows risk. I'm just noting that we decided halfway through last year that this was a priority project, and we're 8 months down the track from trying to actually get this to happen. Can you explain where we are with the stormwater consent that appears to be the issue holding things up?
So the delay was as a result of basically our contract with Westlink terminating, and then further delay from the fact that we never received any professional services outputs that we needed to continue the project from them. So we've had to, in effect, redo a lot of the activities that Westlink had previously started. We haven't done that with every project, just this project, because it is the highest priority. The project is relatively simple, except for the stormwater element, and the stormwater element is extremely difficult to address. We've identified a location where we want the additional stormwater to go, but we need to reach agreement with the owner of the property to take that additional stormwater. That's not something that can be done in one visit or very quickly. It takes a sequence of negotiations, refining the design, further discussions with Bay Plenty Regional Council, back to the landowner, that type of thing. So it's not an easy thing to do, and it is taking time. So we are in a relatively good position at the moment. We believe we've satisfied Regional Council's concerns with our design, but we do still need to reach an agreement with the affected landowner. So until we have an agreement in place with that landowner, then the project is still at risk, I guess, is what I'm saying. So
once the agreement with the landowner is obtained, what is the time frame from that point onwards to be able to actually start?
Probably, what are we now, June? It's probably next month, early August, we'll be looking to procure a contractor. Once that contract is procured, then it'll be 2 or 3 weeks after that we would expect them to start. So we're probably still looking at construction early September.
Have you got any other concerns in regard to any other barriers that are going to stop this from happening?
No. Consent of the stormwater and agreement with the landowner is a primary concern. Like I say, it's a relatively simple project, other than for the fact that we're increasing stormwater runoff by virtue of the fact that we're widening the road, and that we have to find somewhere to put that additional stormwater. So we have amended the design to reduce the amount of stormwater that will be discharged into private properties, but we still have to address the effects of discharging that additional stormwater with the affected landowners, and that is a timely is a process which takes time.
Well, thank you. I'll leave the number 4 road bridge when we come to that. Do you want to say, give us an update on the number 4 road bridge, and then we'll do questions on that?
It's probably easy if you ask specific questions and then I can answer them.
Okay. So what was being presented here now is a new option, option number 6. This hasn't been considered before?
No, it wasn't considered before, no.
And so just in regard to the geotech and the onto that particular location, has all of the geotech stuff been done and it is now known, the situation known there?
No, we've got additional geotech booked in, so we're going to do additional boreholes. At the moment, the pile design has been progressed, assuming that the ground conditions at the new location are the same as at the previous location. The additional geotechnical engineering will allow our designers just to confirm that before they finalise the pile design.
Oh, and so we were given the multi-criteria analysis between the different options previously. How does that same analysis stack up for this option?
So we did an additional multi-criteria analysis between this option and option 1. This option came out on top, primarily because it provides better access arrangements for the contractor and for road users during construction. So what it does is it significantly minimises disruption to road users. It reduces the amount of road closures that would be needed to facilitate construction of the works. So you can actually see this is a concept layout design for the new option. I only received this last Friday, so that's why it's coming late to the party. But you can effectively see that in terms of the location, it's only 1 or 2 meters away from the Bailey Bridge. In terms of option 1, it's probably 6 to 12 meters away from where option 1 would have been. So it's not a huge deviation from what we originally agreed.
Well, the last one is just around timing. So the previous meeting, an indication were given that early July was anticipated for the beginning of construction. Is this still the case?
I don't think we ever said early July. I think we always said August and September.
Yeah, no, it's there, but I'm just getting a feel for.
So the benefit of this option, one of the benefits is it allows us to undertake earthworks in advance of the bridge works. So those earthworks could happen maybe September, October, and then we'd be looking at bridge construction after that. But the intention is to complete all works before the end of February.
Thank you.
Did you wish to comment on the number 4 road bridge, Rodney? Yep. And Grant, you got some.
There was a letter to council on the 10th of May from a contracting firm. And obviously they may not have been aware of this, and I'm not going to say that I know enough about it to say whether this meets their concerns or not. But the concerns of H2 Orchard Contracting Limited expressed to council this month, does this address those concerns, or how do those two fit together, please?
Yeah, both options address the concerns. So the original option, option 1, the tracking that we did on the design did demonstrate that the largest vehicle could navigate the bridge and then navigate the hairpin bend to make its way up number 4 road. This option does provide a better geometric alignment, but it's important to note that option 1 also achieved the geometric alignment requirements.
So this is better than option 1?
Better, yeah.
Has this been shown to the contracting firm? Because they have
obviously... No, it hasn't. Again,
I know you've only just got it.
We got it on Friday.
If we could flick it to them at some stage, it'll be quite helpful.
Yeah.
Councillor Murray Bench, you wish to talk on number 4 road bridge?
So in common language, a truck and trailer will be able to use better this option.
Yeah, that's correct.
And it could also use option 1.
It could also use option 1, but this is a better alignment, yeah.
Thank you. I've got other questions, sir.
Yeah, but we're just going to close out number 4 road bridge before we go back to our rotation. We've got here. Grant, have you got anything to add on this bridge before we go back to our Mayor James next up?
Was any consideration given to George's suggestion that the eastern abutment be raised and the possibility of connecting straight ahead and take the switchback out of the equation?
No. So what we've done is I've directed our designers, and our designers have proceeded based on what is necessary in terms of NZTA's bridge manual. So that's really the design process that's been taken. We haven't responded to feedback from George or any other customer.
And can I ask, where are we up to with the NZTA subsidy? At one stage, there was a possibility we might get 90% subsidy rather than...
We have a cost estimate now, so we'll basically put that into TO, and then we'll be seeking confirmation from NZTA that we will get full subsidy for that, or a full subsidy plus the additional subsidy for their contribution to the cost.
Which is, what is the full subsidy?
Sorry?
What percentage is the full subsidy?
Well, 51% is the full subsidy, but for the event that covered this, the damage to the bridge, I think there's an additional 20% available for funding of reinstatement of emergency events. So we would be seeking 71% subsidy on this.
Great, thank you. Oh, you do one last bit on the bridge.
Well, I wanted to go back to number 1 road, but do you want to do that now or later?
One road, sorry, do number 1 road now then, and hopefully that's the end of it.
Okay. So you say that you've amended the design so that less stormwater flows onto the property that's in negotiation in terms of getting agreement on the stormwater consents. Does that include narrowing the road at all, or what sort of?
No, what it is we've removed some of the Kelvin channel that was proposed, and we've reverted back to swale drains, because swale drains, they effectively allow the water to dissipate through the ground, so there's not as much water discharged through the piped stormwater network to the discharge onto the private property.
And the initial plan was to get all the stormwater sorted out in the previous season, I think, and then we were going to double up and do stage 1 and stage 2 in this coming season. Cedric, you confirm that? So just want to make sure that we're still looking at doing the whole job in one go.
Yeah, so I think there was some discussion around whether we could actually push the limits on doing the whole lot in 1 2 and catching up. So I think that's still potentially unlikely now in terms of just taking the risk, because I guess the risk is that we don't get the road sealed before kiwifruit season starts, and then we won't be able to hold the pavement. So I think there was an exercise that we were trying to undertake to see whether we could push it. It would obviously mean significant disruption more than actually doing it in stages. So I think Callum's gone through the rationale now, and it's probably just too much of a risk to try and do the whole lot in one go, and risk having the pavement exposed over the winter and to the obviously significant traffic.
Can we just have clarity then on your thinking, if the job starts in August, what's going to be completed in this coming season before kiwifruit?
I would expect the stormwater drainage to be completed and the first section of the rehab seal lining to be completed.
When you say the first section, you mean the section affected by the stormwater of the straight road?
So it's the most uphill section, which is, off the top of my head, is 600 to 930. Sorry, no. 900 to 1930, I think it is.
Right. Two boogie roading projects, those two big key ones. Everyone's had their say for today. Grim, you're going to... Okay. We'll go to Mayor James then. It's on my list here. I'm following.
Two questions and a comment. So on the Waihi Beach wastewater treatment plant, it says progress has been made with the insurer and a commercial settlement has been reached. budgets will have to be adjusted to incorporate the settlement. So can someone clarify, does that mean we have to increase our budget, or is it now because we've got the settlement it's been decreased? So which way is that one going?
Unfortunately, we have to increase our budget in terms of through a submission in July.
So we'll look forward to a staff submission on
Yep,
the
correct.
Great, thank you. The other one was on fluoride, and just wondering if there's a latest on the court battle. I note that things are sort of steadily moving towards contracts being awarded, and do we have any update on the court battle before that happens? No? Okay. And then lastly, just a comment, and that's regarding the Mokoro School development, just to let elected members know that I'm finalising a letter to the Minister to ask that decision be reconsidered, and Chair Tolley is signing that with me, so that's helpful. Thank you.
Mayor James has opened up a couple of new topics there, so like I said, I don't want to circle around. I've got people on the list, but I want to close out these three topics that Mayor James. Andy?
I've got some information on the fluoride thing. So 9 of the 14 councils that were directed to fluoridate have requested extensions or put on hold what they're doing. Vote Health appropriations have a reduction in allocation on fluoridation and rephasing. And yeah, that's the main thing. So the question is, do we want to join the 9 on pushing back and asking for a delay until the legal stuff gets fought out?
I'll get Greg to think on the steps involved in that while Tracy adds her input.
Yeah, really, that was what I wanted to talk about as well, was fluoride, because there's also a possibility that the directives could be rescinded. So, and the court case recently has ruled that it is unlawful under the Bill of Rights, Human Rights. So I'd be very wary of going and awarding any contracts that we don't have an out clause on, given, you know, the pushback we've had from the community and what implications that might have in here as well.
Does anyone else got anything on fluoride before Greg gives me some advice? Margaret.
As you know, I strongly believe that the community should be making this decision and not the powers that be in Wellington. I too am very concerned, because it doesn't matter where we go, people are really concerned about it. We had the pressure on us.
We know that, we just wanted
Sorry?
Yeah, we know people are concerned. We just want to know what steps we can take and what the state of the court case is. Rodney, have you got something?
Just
If we can hold it, sir, until the court case has been completed, that's the issue.
So are staff aware of what Andy just said previously, that the appropriation for this work may have been changed at central government level? Because there's two risks here, right? One is that we go ahead with something we don't need to because of the court case. The other one is that we go ahead and we don't get funded from Wellington. So the risks are increasing even as we speak.
Right, we'll go to John for an update on this.
I don't have an update. Really, just to say, let us get an update. I think there's good information here. We need to go away and talk to the Ministry of Health to find out what their exact position is, so that you're making an informed decision. Because the other thing that you need to bring into that financial issue is the fines that we would be subjected to if we don't have it in time. So it's a bit of a balance we need to work through. We'll talk to Ministry of Health and come back.
So something possibly could come forward to the next council meeting then if there is a major change in developments. We'll leave that to James and staff to liaise. I think we have to leave that topic there. Right, back to my list. Unless there was anything else. What else did James mention? School? No, that's his letter, that's fine. Right, Margaret, your issues.
On the transportation activity, staff are still working on the closeout of the previous CMC contract. How long is that going to take, and what is the cost, Cedric? That's the first question.
So, through you, Mr. Chair, we essentially have come to terms with Westlink in terms of what the closeout might look like. So we're just working through those final details at the moment in terms of getting a legal review of that. I think probably for that type of question will be best discussed in the confidential side of that activity in terms of where we've landed with that. So I think from a staff perspective, we were waiting until we've actually got everything in writing before we come back and initially get the closeout of that contract.
Thank you. Sir, my other one is on the Katikati wastewater treatment plant outfall pipeline. This has been going on for years, and we're looking for a land outfall instead of the outfall. But one of the things I think is so important is that councillors are kept informed. This has been going on for years, and always there's an outside group having a look, but the councillors, the updating for the councillors is pathetic, quite frankly. And under your leadership, Cedric, I'd love to think that we could improve that. The Katikati ward councillors should be on it, but the other councillors should be kept well informed. Is that possible?
Yes, so the project plan will definitely articulate in terms of who's on that working group. And I know I've definitely expressed my interest in that we should have a mix of the Katikati community councillors on that, along with tangata whenua, and then we just need to work out how we communicate that through the district and back to council, whether it's through PNM or what that update looks like, whether it's through workshops. So that'll all be documented within the project plan that is endorsed by council.
Right. My last question, sir, is, and I'm not sure whether it's here or later in the agenda, but I want to make sure that when we change to take control, that we actually have a system that notifies the public and has them better informed than what we had in the past. We could put in an application, or at least a request, and it sort of got lost. And I'd like to think that what we are doing is we take control of it again, that our communication system is 100% better than it was. Is that possible, Cedric?
Yep, through you, Mr. Chair. So I'm assuming you're referring to the transportation contracts. Yep, so part of Cullum's structure includes 2 stakeholder engagement managers. So basically what that means is they receive the requests, then they look at is it an existing activity, is it a new activity, is it bylaw related, is it actually for TCC? And their sole is to basically offer around that wraparound support for our customers and get back to them. And that could be in the form of a callback or an email, but we've definitely considered, well considered that through the restructure that Cullum's provided.
So that means you'll keep councillors better informed. If we put in a request or whatever, there's feedback.
Yep, absolutely. I think there's probably a link there with what Peter Mickelson's doing in terms of what we report in PNM and how we provide a dashboard that shows our engagement with whether it's transport, waters or reserves, what our close-off time is in relation to the 15-day target that we've got. So I think that's something that we can take offline and look at implementing for the next PNM scorecard.
Right, I have 2 further names on 3 and 4 now. Okay, Rodney.
So we're still on that, the traffic light, right? I do want to the scorecard report you look at the same time? Okay, the scorecard report, that's only CapEx, right? Because you've got representation woefully underspent, and I don't think we're that cheap, but it doesn't actually say CapEx. Some of them say CapEx. All of them seem to follow a different format, right? If you look at the one for representation, there's a lovely little cylinder looking very empty. Others say CapEx, others have different formats, some have bar charts. So I really, I take Don's point about the improvement, but I think we just got to get a bit more consistency, because when I look at representation, I don't actually know what that represents. Yeah, it's only a small one, but it actually, actual year to date, $19,700, annual budget, $157,700. I don't know from that what we're actually measuring other than the dollars and cents. Is that CapEx spending for representation? Because I don't think we have any, do we? Well, yeah, so I do think there's a little, I fully take on board Don's comment at the beginning of this is improved, but I don't think we've quite got the consistency and format to allow us to really look across it and get a good viewpoint. And I would like an explanation on what the heck's happening with representation if we've really only spent $19,700. It's a great deal, but I don't think it's real.
Yep, through Mr. No, I take your point, Rodney. I think there is a mixture of CapEx and OpEx in there, noting that our total spend is 148 million, but our capital was 133 million. So it is a bit confusing. I think this report is a work in progress. We've just adopted a Power BI approach to it, so I guess what me and Peter have been working on is that how can we articulate the information that's easy and digestible for elected members so you can provide that true governance. And I think it is unhelpful having those graphs. I think where we're going to get to and what you'll see in the next P&M scorecard will be the new systems and process that Coralie's about to talk to in terms of our capital delivery, which will provide a whole new suite of graphs, but also allow you to delve down to projects if needed on the day. So that's definitely for the next target. I guess probably a bit of where we've landed in terms of an update from the capital spend. We are at about 101 million in terms of forecasting and committed spend. So when I say committed, means we've signed projects that are underway to be delivered. We need to bridge that gap between the 100 and 133 million. So that's what we're going to talk about. But definitely we're not quite there where we need to be with the how we're socialising the information. But the next PNM, we will definitely have a different approach to it and maybe a bit more of an interactive approach.
And I know it's not your area, but representation. Why are we only costing $19,700 if we're not taking our salaries?
I'll have to come back to you on that one. I'll email the councillors.
Right, councillors, I've got 3 more hands that I know of over this side, and then we've got our capital works project, and then we've got our elder housing paper, and then we've got one final matter we have to do in confidence at the end. So I'm just conscious of time, but we still want to get through the work, but we want to hand over to Councillor Granger's committee directly after lunch so Murray can start off fresh then. So Tracy, Murray, Grant. Oh, you're happy, Tracy? Oh, there's one down. Oh, that's good. Murray. To the Deputy Mayor. Okay, there you go.
Oh, I just had a question around the Te Puhi wastewater plant, and I know Cedric commented on this, and it's good to see that some progress has been made and the earthworks consent is approved. But my concern was around 2 things. It talks about the consultant's performance, and it's a long time ago now when I met up with one of their representatives proudly telling me he had started work on this, and it's a bother to me that in spite of all these other hold-ups, here we are, and it looks like staff are holding their hands to help them do this work. But then we've further complicated, it says, when it talks about investigating alternative process technology. And sure, I'm all for making improvements if we can, but I'm just trying to get an understanding of how complicated this all is, and are there concerns about whether, well, clearly there are concerns about meeting timetables, but where we're heading from here.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So it is a challenge at dealing with the current design that we've got at the moment, and it has been brought to a headway. So we are at the point now where we're engaging at a CE level to get an outcome. And what I mean by that outcome is when are we going to get the final detailed design to enable the work to be completed, and also ensuring that we're only paying for what we agree to up front. So a lot of these concerns in all types of scenarios relate to variations or all perceived payment that they think they need, and obviously staff value the work as they see fit in terms of what's been handed to us. So I think what we kind of see over the next coming weeks is a resolution with the designer and clear dates on when we will receive that design and what that looks like, and revised liquidated damages if we don't get that design. In terms of the technology, I guess part of this process, when you're looking at alternatives that came in, this was something that came in or was put forward by I think it was a different supplier. It has the potential to significantly reduce budget, and it's worthwhile having a look at it. So it has come in late to the party, but it does offer not only significant savings, but significant benefit in terms of our overall discharge. I don't anticipate it holding us up in terms of actual progress in terms of our program, but I think it's probably definitely raises concerns from a program, but it's definitely a potential win if it comes off in terms of an overall project outcome.
You're saying the technology part is potentially a good news story in spite of all the other bad news.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Granger.
Thank you, sir. Just my one's the Mokoro roundabout, obviously. I know there are 3 areas of delay there, and I trust they're being dealt with concurrently rather than consecutively. But my question is, final date of completion, has that moved out? What's the current? It's a question I get asked quite often.
So the strategy that we're trying to develop amongst the team, when you think about the industrial road, the section from Prole Road to the rail, Prole Road itself, the temporary roundabout, and then the connection to Francis. So we're trying to develop a procurement strategy that will enable a completion date of December 25, noting the delays with Powerco and the utilities. Some of those will finish at earlier, but from a total project completion, December 25 is where I guess we're targeting. And within that date, some, like I said, some will finish significantly early, but we need to stage it in such a way. Otherwise, if we have the whole lot going from the rail right through to State Highway 2, it's probably going to take an hour to get to work.
So you're saying that the 2 roundabouts, or the 3 roundabouts, and the 4 laning in between them, December 25.
Yep, correct, including the two wetlands that we're talking about as well, and the temporary wetland.
Thank you.
Wow, a big year next year to build all that, and number 2 road, and a bridge anyway, and a sewage plant. So we better get to this capital delivery program in a minute. Who was left? Grant.
You just quickly, Te Puke Wastewater Treatment Plant, Cedric, last time you gave us an update at the Te Puke Community Board, I believe. The new budget estimate was around the $71 million. Based on your reporters, are we still on target for that, or is it blown out a bit more?
That's still the target. I think there's a bit of inflation on top of that within the LTP. So I think it might be around 81 million with inflation, but we're still working towards 71.
Okay. Secondly, well, I've got you, Cedric. The number 1 road rehab, back to that, only from the point of view of the risk type and risk level, I would say that we should have something to do with reputation and public interest in that one as well, because we've been promising, well, I've been promising this for probably 5 years and haven't had much luck in anything I've said to deliver it. And I just want some surety that we will get the first stage completed in this coming season.
Yep, no, fair comment. I think once we've got that stormwater consent and the landowner concerns worked through, I think there's definitely an element with Luke that we need to put out some engagement with the public and let them know exactly what we're doing in terms of those staging, and maybe a bit of a graphic info or even a bit of another on-site meeting. But it's definitely something we've discussed with Andy that we need to do once we've got that landowner permission and we've worked through that. It'll definitely something that we'll work through and engage the contractor to come out on site as well, so that they can have all parties there.
Yeah. So I mean, I know August has been indicated as a construction start time, but that's not far away, and the contract hasn't even been, procurement hasn't even begun yet. So, and my final point, probably to Alison, the Kaingaroa resource consent point in the report, just really from an interest point of view, I mean, 4 to 6 units of resource consent required. We've had several other resource consents that have gone through without public notification, but is there something different about these ones, or that they're non-notifiable as well, but just, is there any variations in their applications that are significant?
Are you talking about, excuse me, through you, Mr. Chair, are you talking about Middlebrook Road and Katikati in terms of the Te Puke?
See, that's confusing. It says several land use applications for 4 to 6 residential units. I guess I assume that was 4 to 6 house units, but it's probably subdivision units, is it? Or
You're talking about, sorry, I'm just trying to be clear in terms of the the developments that have been undertaken that are used by Kaingaora were through Wolfbrook developments in Te Puke have been all granted, and they were granted on a non-notified basis. In terms of the application that's still in process for Middlebrook Road, the resource consent has been lodged, and I've had the information back from the team since Anne's further question, and there has not been a decision made as yet in terms of the notification for those. It is still in the resource consent processing phase.
Okay, yeah, I guess my query is regarding Te Puke because it says it's still being processed or recently granted, so.
It's just timing of the report, councillor.
Okay, and just for the benefit of public interest, which is the risk type for this one, I had a recent discussion with a landowner who's got a significant residential block in Te Puke residential area, and he was dealing with Wolfbrook Residential, and around the time of the change of government, they were putting quite a bit of pressure on those owners to try and speed up the process because they were concerned about the change of government and what that might mean for them. But the owner in question decided to withdraw from the negotiation because he suspected that it might become a KO development, but and he didn't feel that would.
So it sounds like a big commercial.
Yeah, I know. I'm just starting to. You're wandering off path here.
Yeah,
So I think I'm going to shut it down, Grant.
I just wanted to say there is public concern about the developments of Kaingaora and Te Puke. I know ideally we do want extra housing and we do want to accommodate this as much as possible, but there is public interest and there is concern from Te Puke residents.
Yep, all good. Right, Margaret, you looks like your hand's gone up for the final part.
On page 28, on the executive summary, can I comment? We got that
What's
far?
the topic?
My comment is 20 to 30,000 basic dwellings increase costs, and for an average house, it'll go up to 100,000. And so here we are trying to make sure that house prices stay where they are or drop. And here we've got increased legislative requirements that are going to put 20 to 30,000 and up to 100,000 on the cost of building a standard home. And I just think that's just really not quite good enough. Cedric, have you got any feedback on this?
Well, that's big for another day, probably. It's either that or $10,000 per ratepayer to cover it.
It's in the agenda.
Pass on that. Alison's got something.
Yes, so councillor, through you, Mr. Chair, you're talking about on page 28 around the market commentary around building development. So the government brought in changes to the building code, which was the H1 standards around insulation. We brought a briefing to this meeting, probably would have been about 6 months ago, which was outlining the changes that had been introduced at that point in time. It is outside of our control. Obviously, from a regulatory perspective, we're required to ensure that we deliver housing through the consenting process in accordance with those standards.
Understand all that, sir. It just seems to me to be a significant increase that people can't afford. Don't know what to do about it.
Okay, thank you for that note. I'm sure we're all conscious of that. Right, Coralie, are you coming up to talk to the capital delivery program? Yes. Murray's agenda's getting squeezed here as we go. Welcome, Coralie. Right, councillors, vital piece of information that leads on for your half an hour you've just had there, free fall. Here is how we're going to deliver all these projects next year. Everyone's been raising on it. Get ready to open your checkbook and give Coralie some resource.
Yes, please. More resources is always great. So I'm just going to give a quick rundown of some of our changes and approaches to capital works delivery that we're adopting here at council. There's a bit of work going on in the background, probably for the last 5 or 6 months, around setting up a new project structure. And the whole idea is really about enabling the teams to deliver. So this has been applied to all different groups or services within infrastructure. So there's been it's been rolled out all across the whole of infrastructure, but also across wider council, bringing in delivery partners across council. So what we're in a kind of a nutshell, what we're looking to establish is project control groups within council. There's going to be 4 project control groups set up. This is an internal team with Cedric chairing each of them. There'll be one set up for structure plans, one set up for water services, one set up for strategic projects and property, and one for parks and reserves. Within that PCG or project control group, each of them have a program manager, and that program manager is ultimately responsible for delivering that whole work program within that activity. And then within that, then you have supporting them as each of the different project managers sitting with each of the teams. The whole idea is the program managers, and along with Cedric and the rest of the team, will look to deliver what we're calling a 110% capital works program. And what I mean by that is we have our delivery, which council has adopted through the long-term plan. We also have a little bit of a look ahead into future years to start planning future projects as they're starting to come up. Because one thing we do often find is like with any project delivery, there's always a curveball. A real common one is a resource consent needing, which gets delayed, or you're digging on site, you find an arc site, and then you have to stop works. So if that, with our full suite of programs and looking a future couple of years ahead, if that happens to stop and delay a project, we can kind of put that on pause while all that gets sorted out in the background, and we can bring something else forward to deliver that. So that's where I've got up there as a 110 capital works program. That's kind of what we're sort of thinking of and looking at along there. And then as part of this project control groups, there's nowhere for project managers to hide. Everything's out in the open for Cedric and the program managers to really understand where the risks are with delivery, so that we're kind of nailing them as they come up. So we've done a bit of an internal review where our challenges lay and where our opportunities are. So I've kind of talked through most of this already, but one thing we do have is we use our financial management system to track projects, which is not great, and we use that for project reporting, which is not great, which is where we're trying to bring in Power BI and other tools and systems to help create more visibility about how our projects are tracking. We've looked at our capital programs are growing every year. Like next year is humongous. And so we've done quite an in-depth internal resourcing review and had a look at can we actually deliver what we're saying? And part of that resourcing review has identified where we can outsource projects to external project managers, where we need to recruit more staff to support the delivery, and where we may potentially need to push some projects out. And that's going to come through an internal submission through the LTP to say, hey, we've had a look at our projects, we actually can or can't deliver this, and it might lead to a recommendation from staff to rebudget some projects. I've talked about tracking and reporting, and then creating the accountability and governance. And we're also looking at training all our project managers internally to, we have great project managers, but there's nothing like a group of people coming together to share knowledge and uplift each other and improve the way we deliver. So we're setting up some structure within council to enable that as well. This is the PCG group, which I kind of talked about earlier. So at the top you have the governance, which sits with the activity manager and Cedric and the finance manager, and then the program manager reports up to that, and then the project managers help support the delivery, and then we'll bring in different business partners as we need to. So if there's a project that's been impacted by tangata whenua engagement, we might bring Chris Napier into the discussions at the PCG level. We're developing procurement strategies. So this is really good forward planning in terms of our delivery from within the market. So we're having a look at what type of contractors and professional services we need and wrapping it all under one big procurement strategy, which basically signs off the approval for us to do those contracts, which helps prevent any delays and make sure that the market can actually also deliver what we're asking them to deliver. We are excluding from that any of the large complex projects, which you would need to develop a procurement strategy for individually anyway. And then again, I've talked about this, but your councillors have already kind of had a look at the scorecard Power BI reporting that's coming through. We're also using this internally as a better tool for us to create the visibility of the projects. This is just kind of an example of our vision or our dream of what we're trying to do. So we're having a look at financial tracking, forecasting the project over the full year or the full life of the project, and then tracking how we're spending across it. And it's a great way to sort of see if we're delivering what we said we were going to deliver. We're also having a look at forecasting better where we may or may not deliver, or where projects going to be go overspend or underspend, so that we can create more visibility for yourselves and our senior leadership team at council, so everyone knows where we're at. So this is a new approach, and it is developing, and it will develop for a few years yet. We do have a current number of different risks with it, the late adoption of the RTP being one of them. It creates a couple of internal process issues that we have to work through, but we're working through them. And then, yeah, that's it. Next steps. So as I mentioned, we're doing that final review on resourcing and deliverability. That will inform an internal submission to yourselves that will come as part of the RTP deliberation. And then from there, we will deliver everything we say we will. Yeah.
Yep, Cedric.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you, Carly. So just a couple of things I wanted to talk about as well as, so when we talk about the PCG groups, it does have a tone to sort of say governance type structure, but it's actually not. It's utilising our existing staff who have a lot of experience, and then providing a support structure around our project managers to enable them to make decisions and give them basically the resources they need to be successful in their projects. One thing you would have seen up there is we use the word hybrid PMO. So one of the things that we worked through over the sort of 5 or 6 months is, do you implement a full-blown PMO structure, which is going to add a whole lot of overhead, more resourcing? And I know that, I think we've talked about it before, Councillor Joyce, around having big structures doesn't always actually add that sort of value. So what we've tried to do is look at how do we maximise our talent within council, the likes of Coralie and Cullum, and spread them across the infrastructure group to help them mentor, provide that input around whether it's consultant engagement, supplier engagement, how do we actually maximise their talent across the entire group. When we look at resourcing, we've got a lot of talented people within our infrastructure team in terms of project managers. What we don't have is, I think, is some of the maturity around tools and resources like the cash flow and forecasting where it needs to be. So I think what that's going to drive is a level of accountability within our own team, but then also that wraparound support where if a project's not going too well, then you've got likes of Coralie, you've got Cullum, you've got Peter Watson, you've got all these really seasoned people who can give you advice, help shape that decision making, because that's really what project management is about. It's actually decision making to enable the contract to go forward. And probably the other thing is probably looking at an in-depth analysis in terms of what we can actually deliver and what those hurdles are, and also understanding the true risk. And the true risk, a lot of it for our stuff is around consenting. How do we manage that consenting process? How do we manage our engagement, whether it's with Tanga Whenua or the wider community? And then how do we actually loop that back around in terms of our timeframes? So I think the key thing we're trying to get across here is that every project is going to be essentially in the spotlight and held accountable, and there's layers within our existing structure to provide that wraparound support to enable that delivery. And the 110% approach is, from my perspective, an awesome goal for us to try and achieve as a team in terms of meeting those requirements. So I guess, yeah, any questions that you've got?
And you had a question?
I'm pleased to see that you've got up there that spreadsheets can be a dangerous thing, and they don't really give you a lot of information if you don't understand what's led up to creation of the figures. So what will you be presenting in terms of spreadsheets?
So we'll always have spreadsheet. It's the inputs that we'll have from the Power BI dashboard. So what that'll look like is staff will be reporting on, is the project on track? Is it behind? Is it delayed? Looking at our forecasting, when are we spending our funds? Utilising, I guess, dashboards for the likes of the PCG. So what are our top 5 escalations for that particular group? So as an example, if you're talking about waters, it could be at any one time, it could be the Waihi Beach treatment plant, or it could be a renewals package. So what is it that's preventing us from delivering or meeting our committed timeframes? So that's what it is. It's really a face to enable delivery and prevent us losing weeks here and there.
So foreshadowing ahead and.
Correct, similar to what we've always done, just a lot more in depth
Yeah.
around, and it's probably the wraparound support for project managers
Yeah.
and some very basic tools. So basically getting back to the basics of pure delivery, and then keeping track. So it's regular, everything's monthly. So it's monthly updates on forecasting, monthly updates on programming, just at a PCG level. But then if you think about it from a program level, that'll be weekly updates, could be daily updates or daily interactions, whether it's with Coralie around, hey, this is not going well. And then she will share her wealth of knowledge and strategic direction to shape that conversation.
I also like the holistic approach to what you have just said, because the team is working together. Each has their own role within it, some supervisory, some on the ground, but they're all working towards this project being a success. And in that way, they're all responsible.
Right, any further, Rodney?
Just a couple of quick things. One is you've got the communications manager as optional. And I think one of the themes that's come out of this morning's meeting is that more communication is needed. So before John throws things at me, because I'm always asking for more comms, you know, if we can incorporate that in a way that's low touch and gets information out rather than multiple levels of approval, that would be a real help, because people do care about this stuff, even though it's, you know, and I get it, engineers want to get things done, and that's what engineers are trained to do, and we don't want to necessarily hire engineers that are great communicators. We want engineers that get stuff done. The other thing is the cost. Is there a cost element to this? Yeah. Do you think we'll save money by doing this? Because the focus you're bringing to it should actually, as well as getting things moving faster, should actually achieve cost savings in an ideal world. I'm not asking you to guarantee, but is that part of the focus? And yeah, I think that would be, I think there is a culture, certainly I've heard from other councils where, you know, the moment the word council's mentioned, the cost goes up by a third. So breaking down that sort of traditional, the council, a council will take whatever price I give them, is also a part of this as well, right?
Yes, I think where the cost savings will come from my perspective is our upfront procurement strategy. So looking at rather projects in isolation, we're looking at projects in terms of what are we going to do in terms of the entire water services group, how many are we going to bundle, what efficiencies can be made through smart procurement. Also, I think the big one is isolating key roles, i.e. the program managers. They will influence a lot of how the procurement is shaped, engagement with consultants, whether we're using the PSP or the CoLab framework. So they'll offer their experience will definitely come in terms of their decision making. And as we have our project manager forums and we talk about procurement, a lot about how the expectations we have of our consultants. And what I mean by that is that we're this right, but probably we can be a little bit soft at times. So maybe taking a bit more of a firmer approach in terms of what our expectations are. And when I say that, I mean timeframes, cost. It's taking a bit more firm approach. But a lot of that comes with confidence and training our project managers to get there. But I think overall we should see benefits, not only just in efficiency, but we should see cost savings. And I think that was a key goal for us, was that we didn't want to implement a big structure that was going to apply a whole lot more cost around governance to something that we already have the talented people to deliver on.
Cedric, has any high-level work been done on the extra costs versus the possible deferment to that, what we went out with the LTP, or is it too soon? Is it going to come through in John's work once the submissions are all received, or?
I'm not anticipating any additional costs. It's potentially we may push a couple of projects out, depending on what that might look like. But definitely, I don't envision any additional cost.
So John's not under huge threat in terms of rate rise?
Not from my perspective.
No. Margaret?
Mine's question is on page 45, and it's the training our people, poor consultant performance, lack of framework, projects getting lost and troubleshooting. Is that the problems that we've been having, or are these the things that you don't want to see happening in your new structure?
It's probably a bit of both. I think it's around how we apply our project management, I guess using consultant performance as one. And what I mean by that is getting our engagement processes right up front. So having clear KPIs. So we expect you to deliver on this date within this budget. And I guess there'll be some elements where we potentially would hold money if we don't get those performance. We have a lot of, we have a good reputation at Western Bay in terms of our engagement and collaboration. We just need to make sure that our expectations are clear. I think where we say projects get lost in translation or a lack of PM framework, it's just around some of those minor things around having clear process to make decisions, or having clear processes so that things don't drag on. And when I say projects getting lost, staff can be quite busy, and then they can tend to some projects fall away. It's a bit of a resourcing thing, but also a bit of a comms thing within the group. So I guess what I mean by that is that if, say for instance, one project's taken a lot more time than the other, then we need to stop, have a look and rethink about what that resourcing looks like, and maybe another project manager to take that on. There has been a tendency at times that one of those projects may just sit there or be on hold or then push through. So it's really just capturing that and making sure our staff are well resourced and supported in terms of not only like the Power BI stuff we talked about for reporting, but also just when things get a bit tough, or they've got a difficult consent or a difficult engagement, or what that might look like.
So while we've got such a competent and capable leader within this organisation, it's a sound framework. But will it work if, for example, you left and someone of a lesser standard came in? Would this still work?
He's putting in the run over by a bus syndrome in place. Yeah, that seems.
Is this a structure that can work regardless?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think the strength is all within the infrastructure leadership team in terms of our delivery and our program managers. I think I'm just the face of it, so I appreciate it.
Right, Grant.
Cedric, thanks for your, well, the whole thing really, but just your explanation about the project control group, because in the past, council has utilised something by the same name, project control group, to oversee like the number 1 road single laning project, for example. Gary Ellis established a project control group that included elected members and community board members and other interested parties from the area. But I understand this is a internal staff thing, but do you see a place for something like that for some of the more visible projects?
Yeah, so this definitely won't replace the need to have a dedicated project control group or governance group for, say, the Katikati Outfall, or eventually when we get into the nuts and bolts for the Te Puke treatment plant, or even here in Crescent, you'll still need an element of, for the bigger projects, a dedicated governance group that might have tangata whenua elected members or independent advisors. This group is purely about focusing on what are our processes and systems to deliver the 24-25 capital program, what decisions do we need to make. And what I mean by that is looking at an escalation might be that we need to go back to council for this one to get some direction. So the group is more focused on, it's probably more operational in terms of tracking delivery and fixing concerns that we've had around why we haven't met performance, but all that higher level direction that we need from elected members, that will remain.
And just on the monthly update meetings, to sort of keep everyone focused and on track and remind them that they've got a project they're supposed to be delivering. What's happened in the past? Has there been sort of, why have projects either been neglected or forgotten or not delivered? Is there some explanation in this change that would help us understand why we've had such poor capital delivery in the past?
Yeah, I don't think we've had poor capability in terms of our staff. It's just in terms of how we've had structured our people, in terms of what the tools we've given them. So like I said before, we have a tendency that staff are probably a bit too optimistic around some of their approach to delivering projects, and they probably take too much on. So now what this does is opens up another level of support. I think probably the direction now in terms of what's needed SLT from a monthly update. I guess Council CEO has a different view in terms of what needs to be updated. So having come from a project background, he likes to see monthly updates that things are kept on track. It's a different level of reporting compared to maybe the previous CE. So it's just how we're measuring that success going forward. So, and which forms this part of this big picture. But I think a lot of it has just been, we've had the resource and the capability, we just haven't managed it in the right way. And it's not so much actually the delivery, physical delivery, which we do really well. It's getting to that point. So it's our prof services, stakeholder engagement, and involving the community, which I think sometimes as engineers we struggle a bit with. We deliver really well and come up with the right solutions. It's just getting to that point and bringing people along.
Thanks, Grant.
IT side of things and the sort of previous or ongoing reliance on spreadsheets versus a fully integrated IT system like we're trying to transition to, or other councils have, which in your experience, how effective are they at actually imparting the information, or do people, it's just more readily available if someone goes looking for something?
They can have many answers to that one. Me personally, I think having a project management tool can add real value in terms of multiple people having logins to understand where a project is at. And what I guess Power BI offers, it offers you a snapshot of not only budget, program, at sort of one click of a button. So I think that's probably only a start for us. So I think part of year 2 of the LTP is Coralie and Peter will be looking at a project management tool / framework that'll enhance what we're doing. So what we're focused on for year 1 is purely about delivery. Three key, I guess, support tools, which is the finance and forecasting. So which means every month you find some forecast. Risk management, so identifying what are your top 5 risks. That might be at an extreme level, that might then be escalated up to elected members. And the third one is dashboard reporting. So SLT keeping us accountable in terms of what are you delivering monthly, where are you tracking against your capital versus your forecasting, and then eventually coming back to P&M where it'll all come together and we'll have that dashboard. So it's just put in minor processes that aren't onerous, that will actually just offer support service rather than more red tape.
Thanks, Grant. Looks like you're going to get a chance to see it in operation before we get shut down next year's election. So some first projects are going to kick off and they can really get on with some work once they get rid of the politicians. Right. I need to move in a second that report for the last hour and a half. Moved Anne Henry, second Margaret Mobenge. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Right, elder housing. Alan Carey, is it coming up? 2 items left. Murray and I do have a community board meeting to get to tonight, so we've only got 2 more meetings after this one. Hey, Murray, we might get some tea on the road on the way home. Welcome, Kerry. Hot topic. Sadly, we've lost Dr. McCabe. We got worn down by our previous matters.
It's really quite important because the poor people have left. And normally when people make submissions to us, we actually bring the issue forward.
Oh, they can go
so
back. This is
here.
available online, so we'll be able to watch any questions that get asked now anyway. So it will be available for him and anyone else interested. Kerry, welcome along.
Thank you. So take the report as read, and Ellen and I are here to answer any questions that you have.
Tracy, oh, sorry, Councillor Cox here.
I've actually got a few, but I'll start with, so in terms of the policy, it would appear that we're breaching it currently. Are there consequences for that for us as councillors? The self-funding of the policy, so this is a ring fenced?
We're not breaching the policy.
We're not, it sort of implies we are here.
No, we haven't applied any ratepayer money to the current account.
Shall I carry on with a couple more? I'll get a couple out at once, eh? Need the glasses. Oh, so we've talked about this in the past, and I just wonder, because it's a ring fence policy, shouldn't we be reporting this separately as we talked about in the annual report going forward? Has there been any more progress with that?
Yeah, I think we've agreed to do that in the annual report. Yep.
Cool. I'll go one more and then, well, maybe because you're answering quick, maybe I can go for 2 more. Just in terms of the development, what, I know it's the contract's been awarded, what's the actual cost for the development? Including earthworks, everything?
This is public. So it's estimated that the completed development will be, including the earthworks, will be about 8 million.
8 million. So we're going to have surplus funds?
No.
We could have surplus at the end of it. We're just not willing to give that up right now because it's a project. We've got a commitment back to DIA that any surpluses from this or any of the other projects go to Waters.
Right, so potentially 4 million based on, no? 6.5 million plus 4.6. So we've got 11.1 and you're saying 8 million all up? So 3.1 million. Potential.
The MHUD money, the Ministry of Housing and Development money, will only fund up to half of the project. So that's the 4.6 million. So it will be 9 million.
But that included land value, didn't it? Our contribution could be the land value?
Yep. Yes.
Yep. Okay, one more. Oh, so this is onto Beach Road. What's the market value of Beach Road? Do we have I know what the rateable value was quoted as, but what's the market value? Do we have a value for that?
Yes, I do have it, but I don't have it with me. I can get it for you and send it to
Thanks,
you.
Kerry. Have your break now.
We'll come back to you on those more accurate costs around the total cost and what was allocated as well, Councillor.
Right.
Can we, at some stage, obviously there's some wash-ups to be done, we're too early for that, but obviously I'm very intrigued by your comment that any surplus we spend on Three Waters, which is great. But, I guess it'll be a year or so away before we actually find out what the final number is, and I presume that'll come back to council for a wash-up.
I think it'll probably be before then. I think as we've got a certain, it is a fixed price contract, but you know how those work, and there is a certain amount of contingency. We also need to work through the financial contributions side of things. So we've just got a few things that we want to tidy away. We probably should be at a reasonably high level to know what that surplus looks like in the next few months.
Cool.
I'm not sure that it needs to come back to council. The DIA have instructed in terms of what has to happen with the surplus.
Yeah, okay. But if we're going to report back to the IA, it'd be good to report back to councillors as well. On the Beach Road, can we have, bearing in mind we've now been given some numbers saying that it doesn't add up, can we bring that back to council as well? Because it's a concern if we're spending more on a property than it's worth, or have spent. I mean, I know it's historical, but there seems to be some concern about that. Now, John, you and I have talked about the line that was highlighted this morning on future subsidies. And I understand it from you that's going to be taken out of the long-term plan, so perhaps we should just tell the wider council that. So the subsidies going out to 2031 are aspirational, and they're coming out of the long-term plan, is what you've told me. Couple of others. The concern I have with this balance sheet and the whole thing generally is it starts from 2025, but we know we're starting from a deficit, right? So the deficit in current account deficit in 2021 was 600 and something thousand. The number listed in this document is 800 and something thousand. So we're actually, the current account's deteriorated over 2 years. So can we get numbers that actually take us back in time as well as forward in time? Because we're not starting from zero, are we? We're starting from behind. And I fully appreciate that elderly housing from before my time was a clean-up job, right? It was not paying its way in, and the council at the last long-term plan put in place a program to fix that. But it just seems, we're just starting, we should start from where we were rather than trying to start from zero. Another question of mine is corporate overheads. It seems remarkably low, considering our corporate overheads for the whole council are more than $30 million. How did we arrive at a figure of just over 100 grand per year for corporate overheads? It starts at 138, gets up to 170, when our total corporate overheads across the whole council are 31 million. It just seems very, very light.
In terms of the deficit for where we started from, obviously, yes, we did have a lower number previously. I had rolled this forward for 25 being forward-looking along the LTP. The main reason for the gap is going to be that we're currently missing all the rentals coming in for Heron Crescent while it's being redeveloped. So we can definitely go back and fill in those holes and how we got to the starting position for 25. In terms of the corporate overhead allocation, that's probably a bigger discussion around the LTP and how the corporate overheads have been split amongst all the activities within council. We can go back and review that. But essentially it came down to, we gave it a bit of a look to see whether that was reasonable in terms of the resources that are being applied in there. If anything, yes, you're right, it's probably a little bit light. But we're trying not to load up too many costs within this activity because it is marginal.
Yeah, I mean, the trick is, of course, is that our costs, how do you allocate? I mean, the council's part of that overhead, right? Along with the CEO's department and everybody else. So, you know, it needs to be fair across all activities, and particularly when it's ring fenced. You know, we don't want to go heavy, that's not fair either, but we also, I think we need to make sure we've got a robust way of allocating overheads. And
There is a robust way of allocating overheads. There's a waterfall model that is very prescriptive about what percentage of whose costs go to what activity. It's very prescriptive.
Adele, did you want to add anything to that?
Through the chair, much to what the chief executive just commented to, we do have a waterfall in each of the drivers of our various costs, whether it's IT, it could be based on a per person type cost, or so we do have that structure in which we do provide the overheads. The elder housing portfolio itself is a very low sort of resource requirement for the activity to actually physically run it, and therefore it does attract a reasonably low overhead cost as a result of, mostly in terms of the number of people in that particular operation.
Thank you. Mayor Jones.
Well, first of all, thank you for bringing this report to us, and it clarifies a number of questions, I guess, that the people on the table had on this, and shows that we are turning the ship and we'll end up with a healthy portfolio in reasonably short order. The question I had was talks about the growth projects currently in the LTP that are being consulted on. That's 800,000 in 2027, 923,000 in 2029, and 960,000 in 2031. What are those?
Yep, so those are what Councillor Joyce was just talking about. So they were projections that we may look for external funding, and they're going to be removed from the LTP. So they're not money that we would be putting in through any other way but external funding.
So they're for projects that don't exist anymore?
That's right.
Okay.
Well, just to round that out a little bit, I don't think we can rely on that funding coming in. So it doesn't make sense to have them in the LTP. I don't think that then constrains us for planning and strategising changes to the portfolio as we go ahead, based on the surpluses and borrowing that we'll be able to afford based on the new rents and so forth, and the new 26 units coming online. So if and when we can look for funding externally, but I don't think we can rely on it at this stage.
Thank you. Okay.
And just going back to Councillor Coxhead's first question, so the contracted build, or the build that we have for the Heron Crescent units, is 6.5, or just under 6.5 million, plus the 1.2 million that we've already spent on services. So that's what the current build, but of course it's a contracted build, and while we'll keep a close eye on it, it could go over that price. But it's also good to remember that the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development money that we got has to be spent on this project, and if we don't, and it's to fund 50%, so what we don't spend on this project, we don't get to claim.
We'll spend that money first before we spend the waters money, and then keep the waters money for other projects.
Or 50% of it. Councillor Murray Bench.
Mr. McCabe raised a number of issues that I don't think have been addressed yet. But one of the things that really bugs me is when we did the fees and charges and Official Information Act requests, and we were told that it would be seldom that it would actually be used, the increased cost. And yet here are people trying to understand and you're charging them a significant amount, and I think it's grossly unfair. That's my first comment. We accepted the charges, but I accepted them that we were not going over the top with charging. And here, in fact, it's exactly the opposite. That's my first comment.
Is it working? Yep. Two things in that. Mr. McCabe's argument was largely around opportunity cost or opportunity income, if you like. So it was all about if you hadn't put this funding into housing, it would have gone somewhere else and reduced ratepayer money. You can't disagree with that. Obviously, the use of the money was pretty limited around community and housing and those sorts of things. So it wouldn't have gone into pure infrastructure. It's a bit of a moot point. Council made the decision about where they wanted to spend the money, and that's how we've applied it, and we are contracted to do that. In terms of the fees and charges for Lagoima, you're absolutely right. We've constantly promised that we'll only do it in exceptional circumstances. This is an exceptional circumstance. Dr. McCabe, on behalf of the Ratepayers Association, has put in 17 Lagoimas on the housing project. That is beyond reasonable and how much work we should be doing for one individual, one organisation. It is the only charge that we have suggested in the time that I've been here.
Could I say, sir, that it's really good that you meet with them now and answering their questions, but he has raised a significant number, and always when we have public forum and any questions that are raised, we can't make decisions from it, and it goes to staff to report back. And I would like to see that the questions that have been asked, that we get answers back as councillors. I feel quite concerned that there's a significant amount of money. He's also claiming that we're not charging the correct amount of rent, and I certainly have asked that in the past and was assured that we do, but we don't. And on the New Heron ones we might, but on the others, I'd like to think that we actually had more information coming to us. I think we're entitled to that. And I think because it's a ring-fenced operation, it makes it more important that we are actually very detailed in what we provide, not only to we councillors, but to the public at large, because it's significant. And if it's not going into housing for the elderly, it's work that can go into sewerage, for example, the outfall for Katikati. There are lots of ways that we can spend that money because the demands are significant. And I just am very worried that we are actually charging our ratepayers an amount of money and on debt and servicing loans, which could have gone to actually reduce some of them. And so I'd like those questions answered.
Well, I can answer some of them, Mark.
No, I don't need them now.
I can tell you, you were part of the decision around the table to make that decision, so the decision's been made, so there's no point trying to rehash it. We've made that decision. We've also put in steps to increment the rates up to that cap percentage, and which shows a pathway forward that it is ring-fenced and it is not subsidised. So barring that, I don't know what else we can show you. We've shown you the pathway forward. We've made the decision to do it. So it's all there in the report.
I'd just like to add that Mr. McCabe's questions and, well, the more statements than anything else are based on a number of assumptions that aren't accurate, as has been he's previously presented. So, you know, he runs his own financial analysis using assumptions that we don't use. So I'm not inclined to use resource to go through and try and model his assumptions. We've modelled, and I'm comfortable with the modelling that we've done.
The Omokoro ratepayers is a formidable group, and one of them is David Parkington, who was for several years a tax expert in OECD, and they have got a really grunty group of people who are looking for serious answers. And I'm really quite concerned that they're not going to be satisfied with these. And I would really like our council to be upfront and answering them all, as we are entitled to have that information in order to defend the council's right in the community as well. So it's not over, and I would certainly recommend that our council officers' report lie on the table until these issues are clarified and rectified if need be.
Right.
And I'm moving that, Sue.
Well, we're not taking any movement at the moment. This is an information for only report. Councillor Coxhead.
Just a few more questions. One was just, I think it might be a typo. The Kari Beach Road development was 1.6 million, wasn't it 1.8?
No, we came in under budget.
Okay, cool, thank you. And just, I've got a few here around the balance sheet. So just looking at FY34, you've got the 4.4 million, presumably that's offset against the liability. Is that how we're looking at it? As in there would be no debt at that point, even though it's showing a debt? Or would we continue with the loan repayments? So you've got a surplus, total current assets, 4.4 million, and then you've got non-current liabilities, total liabilities, let's say 1.3. So do we continue to maintain the loan and pay interest, or do we pay it off from the cash surplus?
The balance sheet's been factored in with a loan repayable over 25 years.
Yeah.
So that's keeping up to date with the commitments to that loan based on what's been modelled in here. Those cash surpluses, you could then elect to do whatever you needed to do, either reduce debt or reinvest.
Okay, so we're not just assuming it will carry on with the debt then. So how many units do we end up with, and what's the rent going to be? Okay, I don't expect you to answer this now. Come back if you want to.
Once Heron Crescent is completed, we'll have 85 units.
85, yeah. And the rent question, by all means, just come back if you
We
want to.
haven't set the rent for next year yet. For the
Is it still on the same basis? Because we were talking about increasing it, weren't we?
Yeah, it will be increased this year.
Okay.
The rent will be increased. We haven't determined what to yet.
So
We're
has it
just doing
been
those calculations.
Sorry.
We're just doing those calculations now.
So has there been any more investigation of obviously not being able, the pensioners not being able to claim the accommodation allowance? Has there been any other way around that, or looking at any other way around that?
Yeah, we're actually meeting with the lady from WINS this week to discuss that, because it's, I don't know if you've ever gone online and looked at the accommodation supplement calculator, but it's very vague, and that's been a problem for us. So we're meeting with her on Friday, but it goes from $74 to $105, but we need our tenants to be able to maximise that.
I'm sorry, what I'm meaning is, how the external providers can, they can claim market rent, and then the pensioners are subsidised. That's what I'm meaning.
Yeah, we can't claim market rent for our elder housing portfolio. Our agreement with MHUD says that we won't charge any more than 80% of market rent. And our current policy says that we won't charge more than 35% of their income.
So what I was meaning was that, as a community housing provider, you can do that. And we were looking at maybe there was some structure or something along those lines that we might be able to do that.
We looked at the different structures through the 17A review, including setting up a housing association or a community housing trust, and council decided that to retain the housing internally. And you're absolutely right. While we're under that model, we're subject to the same subsidies that any other landlord is in terms of the accommodation supplement. We're not treated like and no councils are treated like a community housing provider where they can claim the difference between 75% basically of the market rent back from Crown. So we're not eligible for that.
Okay. Just a couple more things here and then I'm done. So we just looking at the non-current assets of property. So it goes up 12.3% from FY25 to 26, the value. And then it sort of flatlines a bit. I was just wondering what the rationale was there around the valuations. There's no future value component in that, correct? I'm not sure what the rationale is.
In terms of the non-current assets, we have in there the existing investments we have in the current units. There's also assumption in there of a revaluation done every 3 years. So it's probably flatlining in that last sort of period due to just coming to an end of a valuation period.
I see what you're
Also,
saying there.
the longer we look out, the more consistent the inflation assumptions are.
Thank you. That's probably enough for now.
Councillor Henry.
Thank you. Well, this is actually looking a lot better than the first graph that we looked at, where we were coming into the black, probably at about this end of what we're looking at now with the original modelling. And Kerry, I don't know, were you involved with that with Jodie, that original model last triennium we looked at? No. So I'm really pleased with that, and good to know that it's ring fence, so we're going to be looking at it as a separate item. For some reason, it has become a particularly hot topic with the community. So I see this as a reputational risk for this council because of the attention that it has created. And these figures look very promising and much better than, as I said before, that we looked at. Can I just ask about point number 9, as to why that was in there? External funding we've got now of, is it 6.5 million, is that correct? I know, just in point number 9, it's talking about.
So in terms of point number 9, I was asked the question if, based on the current cash flows that are going to be coming in, what's the maximum that we could borrow and have it funded from the elder housing rental? And that number's currently looking at about
so
6.5
that's what I
million.
thought it was. That's in there as an explanation around the noise that was coming in and people asking questions about it.
No, that's serviceable debt headroom we've got for future development.
Okay, cool. So this question now, 11, in terms of profit that we make from this, does it have to directly go back into the, it does. So we can have, we can have lots more elderly units then.
And
aging units in Te Puke
Just as well we can, because we've got so many old people living in this area.
And I didn't want to confuse today's conversation about future strategy, but that's the next piece of work that we want to bring back to you. So we can see that we've got serviceable headroom, capital, the potential for external funding even when projects come up. So what does our strategy look like around redeveloping the portfolio? That'll be the next conversation.
Councillor Joyce, the last comments on this today.
Well, just on the non-current assets, you've got fiscal year 25, 19 million. Does that must include the Heron Crescent, does it? Already in there? Yeah, okay. So even though it's still being worked on. We've had a submission, obviously, that we're not charging maximum rents under our policy. You've outlined what the policy is. Are we charging maximum rents at the moment?
No, but that's the yes.
Yeah, we will be, okay.
Yes.
And just to bring up Don's point, very good point, you know, some of our elderly units are quite old, older perhaps than the people in them. Well, not quite, but getting there. You know, have we factored into this the fact renewals that would really cover the cost of some of the,
7 to replace.
well, there's also that problem in Waihi Beach as well. But in terms of, you know, I know we've obviously budgeted for maintenance, but bearing in mind the age of our units, have we actually take into account the fact that some of them actually need more than just resurfacing? They might need a bit of rehabilitation, to use a roading term.
So the team spent a lot of time and a little bit of resources lately refurbishing a lot of the units, which has been really good. But I guess that will come in that next conversation, because that's around if we can't get external funding to increase the elder housing portfolio, it's your appetite to loan based on our ratio and our lending ability to build or replace some units.
There's robust asset management plans that sit behind this in terms of both responsive and cyclic maintenance.
Yes, that will be a question for the next council, because
Sorry.
we want to get on and build this one.
Just to finalise that point, I noted that in the LTP there were two separate projects for elder housing. One was based on the subsidy funding for redevelopment work. The other one was around renewals of existing assets. So that has been still factored into this modelling, and that's still sitting at around the sort of 100K a year mark to keep fixing things up.
Knowing that the government is not that impressed with Kainga Ora and is looking for community housing funding and opportunities, it's quite clear that this council could actually be part of that, and it's worth exploring. But I want to make the point, you don't want me to move a motion, but I can say in defence of Mr McCabe, he tabled questions and you will have them recorded, and he is entitled to an answer. We do not make decisions based on what they present, those questions, but it's our job to refer it to staff and the staff to report back. And I stand by that. It's one of the great policies of local government. It's entitled to people to come, and they're entitled to know. We don't make decisions now, but it goes to staff to answer those questions that have not been answered and report back to us. Sir.
Thank you for that. Right, I wish to close off this topic now, and we don't need a motion to receive.
So can I
report.
just have you confirm that that will be the case and that the staff have got the questions that he raised, or do you want them tabled?
No, yeah, but I'm going to repeat partially what the Chief Executive said, that some answers have been, but he's not willing to accept
Sorry,
them.
that's not the point.
Well,
We
I'm
had the
afraid-
questions here, and he's entitled to the answers to be put back to council and to him.
Can I?
We have them recorded, yeah.
Yeah,
we
and I'm
do.
happy to, sorry, Don, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to answer any questions where we've got the information. I'm not happy to do further financial analysis based on his assumptions that aren't accurate.
Right, with that, I do close it off, and I need a resolution to exclude the public for one final matter. Send a couple of members to an early lunch. Deputy Mayor Scrimger, Councillor Sol, all those in favour? Those against? I declare it carried.